All right, a very good morning, everybody, from Captain Nabs. Hello once again. Welcome back to the live stream. It's been a couple of weeks. I've taken a little mini hiatus just to sort of relax, unwind at the end of summer. Not that summer wasn't full of pauses as well, but it's just kind of nice to take stock a little bit in between the seasons and just take a little bit of time, and especially this time of year, a little hectic when the kids start heading back to school and everything else. So yeah, I took myself a little not a vacation, but just a little bit of time, just trying not to stream and just trying to just sort of spend some last few gasps of summer with the family and all that. But yeah, summer is over. It is a very rainy day outside where I live, so yeah, it is a perfect day to get in the simulator. So good morning, everybody. So Envy Silence said the mistake will not be forgiven but remembered forever. For those of you that do follow my Discord to see the stream schedules, I accidentally put the wrong destination for this flight. So in the stream schedule, I wrote originally Orlando to JFK, but today's flight is not Orlando to JFK. It is Orlando all the way up to Boston. Beantown. We're heading to Boston today from Orlando, so a good 2.5 hour flight, almost 3 hours, yeah, with any luck, maybe we'll get some ATC at the far end. Definitely Boston. I'm always excited to go to Boston because Boston is just renowned on VATSIM for having fantastic ATC. They're on a very large proportion of the time, and when they are on, they're very professional. There's a lot of stuff going on, and people are always going to Boston because they know they're going to get good ATC there. So it's always hectic. So I love the idea of going there. I hope that we get some ATC. It's a weekday morning and it's early, so I'm hopeful, I'm optimistic, but I'm not also unrealistic in my expectations. If nobody shows up, well, so be it. But yeah, so that's what we're doing today, and as you probably saw here, we are taking a new bird. So I'm going to take a little bit of a risk today, something I have not done on stream yet, and that is we are going to take the Fenix A320 up flying on stream. And the reason I've avoided this in the past is just because it is a performance hog. And it's just because of the architecture of the way the whole thing was designed. It was never... it's not that it wasn't designed well, but the team at Fenix, I guess, tried to make some choices early on in their original development process to try and make sure that they could bring the most realistic airplane possible to the sim. Part of it was that a lot of the functions, the displays and everything would run external to the sim in a separate program, so everything would be rendered externally and then just broadcast into the simulator itself. And that external program does tend to use a lot of processor power, 10 to 15% oftentimes as you're going. It's not a horrible, unreasonable amount, but it is a fairly substantial amount, and when you throw on top of that running the sim itself, because the sim doesn't account for the fact that anything else is using a lot of power, running streaming software alongside that, flight trackers and everything else that goes with it, it's just... I was afraid it was just going to be too much to stream. Oftentimes, this airplane more than the other will start to grind my sim to a halt when you start to get to a busy airport, which is why I'm a little bit worried about Boston. Boston is a very highly detailed, busy airport, but I've flown this airplane in there a couple times since the updates, and since the update version 2 of this started to come out, and it seems to be okay. It's not going to be great, I'm not going to lie. We're probably going to be in the 20s somewhere on the frame rate by the time we get to Boston, but I think it should be manageable, more so than some of the other streams I've done in the past where it's gone sometimes to single digits. So I'm hoping it's going to work out because I'm happy to show you guys something different. I'm happy to show you guys this airplane. Actually, and I'm just thinking about one thing that I did forget to do, and I'm going to try and do this. I'm going to do this to my best of my ability. And we're going to try and use the FS2 crew with this aircraft. That being said, the FS2 crew SOPs are nothing like the SOPs that I use on a daily basis. Really? A critical update is available? Let me just make sure that this is muted so that doesn't mess up too much. So yeah, so I'm gonna stumble through this, and this is the thing, is I know this airplane very well. I do not know these SOPs, and these SOPs to me are not particularly powerful SOPs. And I'll talk about that more as we get going. But I'm not generally happy with them. But for the sake of this stream, I really like to have I really like to have FS2 crew because I feel like it really adds that sense of immersion when we're trying to simulate an airline career and simulate everything that sort of happens from start to finish as best we can. Obviously, the FO is not fully interactive. They're not an AI. They can't make decisions, offer up options and things like that. They're basically they're basically like a voice activated autopilot, but they can do some stuff, and it does certainly increase the level of immersion, make it feel like we are sitting next to somebody up there. So yeah, let's get that started. I'm just going to go in here, and the other thing that disappoints me a little bit is that we now have synthetic voices, and that really kind of disappoints me. I'm going to try my best to avoid those synthetic voices because I really oh, actually I want to change this. Yeah, okay, so we're going to use human black box. I just and I understand where FS2 Crew is coming from with the synthetic voices. They're constantly making updates to their software. They're constantly adding additional script elements, new voice responses and things like that. And then to go back, and when they have a list of 20 or 30 people that have made custom voice packs for them, and then have to say, okay, I need you to record one more thing so we can add this, so we complete the voice pack, or 2 or 3 more things, and have to have like that wait time to have to go out, send a message to all the people who have made these recordings, ask them to record a couple more things, wait for them to come back and integrate it all, and it just adds additional delay to their process that I'm sure they don't want. So I understand that. But that being said, I really just can't stand synthesized voices. They sound, even the best ones sound fake. A lot of times when we're doing training, we have like slideshows and presentations and whatnot that are done with synthetic voices, and the synthetic voices just sound terrible, because the other thing about synthetic voices is they're still very generic, and things like specific slang and jargon that's particular to aviation does not come across well when a synthetic voice just tries to read something off. You talk about the MEL and it just says the MEL and things like that. Worse things than that. That's just something that just immediately came to mind. But like worse things than that like just it doesn't. Yeah, the synthetic voices and just the way the accent, the talk, the way it all kind of runs together, it sounds awkward, and it sounds way worse than a human voice. So I'm very skeptical of these synthetic voices. I understand FS2 Crew why you're trying to do it. I really do, and I feel for you. But I really just I despise them. I hear them all the time, and I'm every time I hear it, I'm tempted to just send an email to our training department and just volunteer and just say, hey, I will gladly go and record all these voices for all of these presentations for you, rather than have to listen to this synthetic voice. I'd rather listen to my own voice, and I'm not. It seems like I like to talk a lot when I stream a lot, but I don't like the sound of my own voice a whole lot. But I'd rather have that and have the human nature of it, and good pronunciation and good just good tone and speed of conversation, of audio, rather than the fragmented synthetic voices that seems to happen with synthetic voices. Anyways, enough ranting about that. Let's get this show on the road. So I picked myself a let's see here. I've picked myself a FO. Like I said, I'm going to do my best to kind of clump through this. It's not going to be great, because I find and I think the FS2 Crew mostly follows the Airbus SOPs. My company does not. They do to a small degree, and they're slowly moving back towards Airbus, but very, very different. So trying to make this work with what I'm used to, it's going to probably feel the clunkiest of anything I've done thus far. But nevertheless, it's going to be fun. So let's hop in that flight deck and let's get started. All right, before I do anything else, we're just going to establish some electrical power here on the aircraft. So first we'll just check and make sure our battery voltages are okay. Yeah, they're above 25.5 volts. We can go ahead and turn them on. And as you can see, external power is available. Just get it on. And everything just starts clicking up. Lots of warming up everything. And at that point, we can get everything else done that we need to do. So if we were to start the APU, we'd have to do the APU fire test. For now, I'm not going to do it, so we'll defer it to the overhead panel flow later. The biggest thing is to get the IRSs aligned. Get them aligned early on, and one of the reasons for this, depending on your system, but what we've been told at our airline is that we cannot initialize our ACAR system until the IRSs are aligned, because the ACAR system will make choices on the frequencies to use based on where it thinks we are. If you try to make initialize the ACARs before the aircraft knows where it is, before the IRSs are initialized properly, it can lead to all sorts of ACARs errors and glitches down the road. So, not sure why that's doing that. Let me just adjust the position of my camera there. All right, so the first thing we want to do is start those IRSs aligning. So we'll just double check that we have a good database. Normally we swap it at the start of every flight to clear out any and all information that might be in the stored in the database, custom user points, flight plans, etc. Just make sure you swap the databases, make sure they're current, and swapping the databases eliminates any data. It just purges the FMS of all data. So never swap a database in flight, because you'll lose everything you've put in there. It purges all data from the previous flight, which is a good thing to do when you're starting a new flight. Quickly go to the init page, type in our routing, KMCO to KBOS. And the flight numbers. So today we are JBU, JetBlue, and I believe we're 1262. Is that correct? 1282. I keep thinking 1262, but it's 1282 today. All right, so we've got our JetBlue 1282. We've got our Orlando to Boston. And we go to the IRS initialization page. Depending on the generation of Airbus, some of them will start automatically initiating based on the GPS position. And our fleet, they actually do not. We have an older fleet, so they don't actually do that. So what we do is we usually validate the IRS reference location here at the airfield. We'll usually do that right out of the flight plan. Go to our nav log. And the first thing there is north 2825.8. Let me just see if I can lean in a little better here so you can see it without it jumping too far. There we go. North 2825.8 by west 8118.5. And sometimes it's hard to see. The zeros and the eights look a lot when you're zoomed out on this one. It does look good, so we can align on that original ref. It creates a tiny error, but it's more than reasonable for our initialization with our IRSs. And with that, let's do this. Let's start setting up.
Roger.
We'll also load the flight plan into the Fenix, so we'll use the tablet. And I'm just going to go through everything kind of very basically with you guys, just because this is the first time I've flown the Fenix on stream. I just want to, for anybody who's unfamiliar with it, I want to show what we're doing. So when you first start up the Fenix, you go into this red Fenix app, and you can load your flight plan directly from SimBrief. Makes it nice and easy to do, to get the flight in there. And then what I can do is request refueling. And yes, Jeff.
Refueling truck is on its way.
I wish that sometimes GSX would know who we are based on the airplane.
Please don't load aircraft until the fuel truck arrives and ask to do it.
And let's operate the jetway. So the jetway needs to be connected for us to do our thing here. And there we go. So the fuel truck's going to come over, and everything that we need now for the Fenix is preloaded. So the passengers that were planned by SimBrief, our routing is available to the ACAR system. All that stuff is there. So this guy's doing the preliminary cockpit preparation. The FO is going to go out and do the walk around at some point here. And a couple things we need to make sure, of course, is that the nav lights are on. He's going to do a couple checks for us as well here. And I'm not sure why. I keep losing my thing here. Just give me a second here. I'm just going to see if I can find a better position for my IR sensor here. Give me one moment.
I'm out for the walk around.
All right, thanks, buddy.
Fuel truck is in position. Please don't load aircraft until the fuel truck arrives and ask to do it.
All right, hopefully that's a little better. See, every time I look down though, it's like it's a little bit too high. There we go. I think I got it better now. Okay. Let me bring you guys back, and let me bring me up too. I just realized I'm not there. So good morning, everybody. And do I look fuzzy? I do look a little bit fuzzy today, don't I? Just take myself away for a second. I might just try wiping off the lens of my camera, maybe. The lens of my camera's a little dirty there. I still look fuzzy. I'm not sure why. I've always looked pretty clear in the past, and why am I looking fuzzy today? That is weird. That is very weird. Because I really look fuzzy there.
Please use your airplane fuel system to set the desired fuel quantity.
Okay, well, I'm going to let that go for today, but I'm going to have to investigate why. It seems very slow, too. The connection... Yeah. It's supposed to be a very high-quality webcam, and to me, it looks like it's really laggy. I haven't streamed for a couple of weeks, so yeah, that's a little odd, but yeah. I might just even notch this down just a little farther. Because I did knock it the other day, so I figured I probably knocked it out.
To set the desired fuel quantity.
Alignment. All right, I will mess with those settings later. I'm not going to make you guys watch while I mess with these things. So the air fuel truck is here. So in order for this to start loading, what we have to do is just go in here and hit load aircraft. And the nice thing about Fenix is it gives you 3 options. You can instantly load the airplane. You can do like a fast load, or you can do real-time load. So 20 minutes, this loads the passengers and the fuel all at the same time. So you'll see the fuel level will start to go up. You'll see the number of passengers and cargo. Seems to think we already have 100. There we go. Now it's reset itself. There we go. So now it's starting to increase the fuel load, starting to load some baggage, starting to load some people. You'll see the numbers start to go up there, and it takes about 20 minutes to do the whole thing. And since we're doing that, we might as well ask GSX to simultaneously animate the boarding as well. All right, while I've been yakking away here, this has just about finished aligning here. It's got 1 minute left to go. So let's just have a quick look at the weather in Orlando today here. And let's see here. We're looking at winds calm. 10 miles, view at 1300, and where did I put my phone? Let's just pull up the digital ATIS. And this is one thing that
you want to board crew?
Yes, we'll say it's first flight of the day, so we'll board
Pilot's
everybody.
boarding starting.
All right, so my ATIS app, let's just check Orlando and see, are they departing, landing, north, south, east, west? What are they doing here today? MCO. All right, departure information. Departing runways 35 left, 36 right, 36 left. And I don't have any ATC online, so we'll make a plan based on that. All right, looks like our IRSs have aligned properly, which is great. So now we can go back into the FMC and finish the next couple steps, which is to initialize our ACAR system here. So ATSU, AOC menu, airline operations, and start with flight init. And you can put in the data in manually, but if you've loaded everything onto your tablet, it's already in the Fenix system. Just hit init data request. It just sends out an ACARS message in the real world, and in about 30 seconds or so, if even that, there you go. JetBlue 1262, Orlando, Boston, alternates JFK 222 en route time. So that's already all initialized. We could also get the ATIS through the ACARS system. Do some preliminary takeoff calculations, and the other thing we can do to save ourselves a lot of time is using the secondary flight plan initialization page. We can request our flight plan from the ACAR system, so it'll send a message out to the airline computers and ask them to send us a
passengers boarding starting.
Send us the flight plan. And as you can see, secondary flight plan uplink, so it's come in here, nav accuracy upgrade, and GPS primary. So if we go to the secondary flight plan now, you'll see our flight plan is in here. No SIDs, no stars, but all the middle waypoints, everything between the SID and the star is in there. So MCO, VF, Suzy Q, Talon, a whole bunch of waypoints, and we can recheck those all the way up to KBOS. So we can go ahead and go secondary, activate secondary, and we've now got a basic flight plan already inputted without having to do a whole lot of work. We'll verify it, we'll validate it, and we'll put the finishing touches on it in a few minutes. All right. Once we've got the ACARS initialized, the flight plan initialized, and everything, then we're ready for our overhead flow. Assuming the FO has come back to the flight deck, I'm just going to move this back here to inches of mercury and look over there and say 3003 on the meter right now in Orlando. So let's get that set up once, twice, and 3 times. 3003, perfect. All right.
I'm back. No issues on the walk around.
Awesome. He's back, so we can start our overhead flow. Just make sure that there's no lights for the cockpit door light. Check our IRS, verify our IRS positions if you wish, but just make sure they're definitely all in nav. And I do love the Airbus flight deck. It's dark switches. Everything should be dark unless something specifically needs to be on. But for normal operations, almost everything goes dark. With the few exceptions here, turn the flight deck CVR on, and press and hold the test button for a couple seconds. You should hear a tone. There you go. That just validates that it is working. Obviously, we need oxygen on. Wipers are currently off. The audio switching is normal. And test your fire protection if it's the first flight of the day. So I think I heard the FO do it, but I'm going to do it for everybody's benefit as well. So make sure you get the squib discharge lights, the fire light. You obviously get the repeating chime. The warnings, engine 1 fire, and down here as well, engine 1 fire light. APU, again you see discharge squib, fire light. You hear the chime. Why do I keep saying chime? Get the master warnings and the APU fire on the ECAM. And number 2, engine 2, same as engine 1, except it says engine 2, so the engine 2 light comes on. Perfect. Alright, hydraulics, everything should be dark. Fuel, you do not want to turn on the pumps if you're still refueling. That can all lead to a fuel spill if fuel ends up being transferred around in a way it's not supposed to. So during the fueling process, and we are still refueling, pumps stay off. We'll circle back to the pumps. And on the 320, the mode select switch should be in the manual position. Electrical panel. And we should have the electrical status page up here. Turn off the batteries. They should just say off when they're off. It shouldn't have any numbers on there. It should just say off altogether, and then we put it back on. What you're looking for is to make sure that the batteries show less than a 60 amp charge within 10 seconds. So we need to see this drop below 60 amps within 10 seconds of turning the battery back on, or it needs to complete another charging cycle. So we'll have to come back and redo this check. It looks like it's not going to drop. So we're going to have to come back and redo this check afterwards, because in order to be fully charged or charged enough for flight, it needs to be below 60 amps charging. So yeah, this battery one is a little bit weak, or is a little bit discharged, so we're just going to let it charge. We're going to have to come back and redo that test again later. Otherwise, everything else should mostly be dark. Generator faults are normal when the engines are not running. The external power is obviously on, and that's fine. Let's see here. We got 100-something people expected today. 136. So yeah, we will use the normal pack flow. Most of the time, you want to run with your cabin somewhere in this neighborhood. Usually cabins end up being much warmer than you want, so usually something like that. Packs also will show fault light till the engine started.
The security and safety checks are all done. Are you good to start boarding?
Yes, please.
Okay.
All right, there they go. Wing anti-ice. No, none of the anti-ice is on. Make sure the landing elevation switch is in auto. There's a little detent. It's very easy to move it out of the detent and not have it be there, so you want it to be at auto. So all the way to the left. Strobe back to auto. Beacons off. All the lights are off except for the nav and logo light is on number 1. And we can start the APU. Yeah, we can start it during fueling if we want to. We don't need any of the other lights here. We're not done fueling, so the seatbelt sign stays off for now. No smoking's at auto. Emergencies to armed. Alright, and nothing on the maintenance panel. PA switch should be out, and at least at the 12 o'clock, if not higher, to allow the CVR to record any PAs from the back. And everything else is dark. Wipers are off. First flight of the day, we're going to have to do a compass check. I flip up my checklist, except we don't have them in this aircraft. Alright, it looks like that electrical page, it is going down a fair bit there. We are still refueling. You are allowed to start the APU in an A320 while you're refueling, so we can go ahead and start it now, just get it out of the way. Alright, and continuing right along here, so on the glare shield, we do have the flight director on, constraints are on. I like to see the VORs. My FO wants to see the same thing. You should have constraint mode as well. This should always be in 100. Good airmanship. Always leave this in 100 unless you need to make a change. Then switch it to 1,000, make the change, then switch back to 100. That way, if you accidentally hit the knob, you only make a very small change, 100 or 200, 300 feet. You don't make 3,000 feet change by mistake. So always leave that in 100 until you actually mean to make a change, and put it back to 100 once you're done. No flags on the PFD or the ND. The standby instrument obviously is aligned, 0 airspeed, altitude looks approximately correct. Check the messages on the upper ECAM display here. So we are refueling, no smoking signs are on, parking brakes on, TCAS is at standby, and there's a company message, so we'll just have to check the company message. It's probably our preliminary load figures. Landing gear is down, the anti-skid nose wheel steering's on. Tap the date button for a second, just check that the date is correct in your clock. So 12th of September is the date we're flying today. And the accumulator pressure's good, the gear is down. Sounds like the APU has started, so it is say available. So what we'll do is we'll start a timer. You want to do about 3 minutes before you turn on the APU bleed at a minimum. We should have 22.8 for Unicom.
200 the ramp, expecting runway 35 left for departure.
If you had a company cap frequency, you do it. You put it on the number 2. Yeah, make sure you got number 1 on. Number 2 is off. We got the VHF on number 1, and we don't have any nav selection keys. We don't have any cell lights indicated, so everything is configured the way it should be with the audio panels. Let's see here. Gain should be at Cal. Radar systems off. Weather, terrain, and the predictive wind shear's off. The speed brakes are retracted, and cockpit door switch is unlocked. All of our switchings are in at the normal 12 o'clock position. Pressurization page, check that we do have auto pressurization set for landing, so it is automatically detecting the landing elevation status page. See what you've got here. Cat 2 in op, that's fine for this phase of flight. It should clear by the time we get the engines all up and running here. Thrust levers are in the idle detent. Engines are off. Engine ignition switch is at normal. Rudder trim is centered. And parking brake is on. The manual gear extension is stowed on the number 2 side. Make sure that your audio panels are all set up again. No nav or select flags. And then set up the transponder as you see fit. So we should be at standby right now. We're on number 1 because I'm the flying pilot. Altitude reporting is always on. TCAS above is fine. And just leave this in TARA all the time unless you need to turn to standby. That's basically it. We come up and do a quick little instrument cross check. So we do have one FT2. We've got the altimeters 3003, and we've got 100 feet. 3003, 100 feet. 3003, 100 feet. And I don't think I pulled up the charts yet here, but let's pull up the Navigraph charts really quickly. Whew. Trying to go through this as quick as I can. Why am I so fuzzy? I must need some kind of an update to my webcam software. Something that hasn't updated for a long time. I know that. Let's see here. I did that flight a while ago. So let's import a flight. Sim brief. KMCO-KBOS. Yeah, that's the one. There it is. We've also got new changes to Navigraph that I could talk about on the way here. But let's just get the... what was I loading this up for? Oh, yeah. There was a reason why I was doing this, and that was because we just want to confirm the field elevation is correct. Our altimeter setting is correct, so the field in Orlando is at 96 feet, and we are showing 100, so that's very much within reason. All right, let's get that out of the way again. All right, and confirm the headings all match as well, 330, 330. Try and see the compass best you can. Oh, pretty much bang on 330, love it. And 330, 330, perfect. All right, so that our panel flows are all done. Now we can actually get into the meat and potatoes of setting up our FMS. All right, so we go back to the data aircraft status page and verify that we do have the correct airplane. A320-200, CFM 56.5 Bravo engines. The database is current. It's the 12th of September, so it is valid. And performance factor, and I almost always put a performance factor because I fly old airplanes that have an extra performance factor. So you need to put the word ARM in there to be able to change the performance factor, then you can clear it out afterwards. See how it turns green? It means you can't change it. So now I armed it, I changed it to +5, which is what my flight plan was based on. Very seldom do airplanes fly perfectly ideally to the factory specs. It's usually a couple of % increase in fuel consumption and everything else just because of just age. The planes age, they get worn out, the parts don't fit as well as they used to, the aerodynamics are not as smooth, paint chips away. Yeah, just airplanes just slowly start to become less and less efficient starting the day they leave the factory. So performance factor of +5. If we need to detune any nav aids, we could go into data position monitor and selected nav aids, and then type in any we need to deselect if there's any DMEs that are not working along our route, because we do rely on DME as well for position updating as well as GPS. I'm just going to not put anything because everything always works in MSFS, and we'll talk about it another day. Back to the initialization page. The one weird quirk of loading the secondary flight plan in this sim is that it clears out our flight number, so we'll put that back in. JBU 1282. However, it does populate a lot of the other information that we need. Come on, 82. All right, so we do have JetBlue 1282 from Orlando to Boston. The alternate is JFK. Cost index today. And I can do it this way as well. I'll just bring it up on the sim panel just to make it a little easier. So let's fetch it really quick. And there we go. Cost index of 10. Cruise altitude, flight level 370. And the temperature there, the deviation, so we could do minus 54, which is supposed to be 3 degrees. Yeah. I'm going to go with, yeah, minus 51 is fine. And the tropopause, I don't think this calculates it.
Southwest 3614,
no, it's fine. We'll just leave it as it is programmed. And we're ready to go to the flight plan page. So starting with Orlando, click on Orlando and departure, and we're going to depart. And I think we're going to choose 35 left because the departure we're on. I believe we're on the VAP the Faith departure. And I believe it's, yeah, it's pretty much straight north. You can kind of go either way. I might just take the easier taxi. So what did I say for departure runways? 35 left, 36 right, and 36 left. So 35 left, 36 right. So let's just do 36 right because it's a little bit closer. It'll be a little bit shorter taxi. It'll actually be, yeah. Yeah, we'll do it that way. Okay, so 36 right it'll be. I don't see any ATC to contradict us or give us anything different. So 36 right, Faith 3 departure, and according to our flight plan, that takes us as far as VAP, which is the only transition. So 36 right, Faith 3, VAP, insert that. And then at the far end into Boston, we are, SimBrief is planning us anyways, arrival, runway 4 right, so we'll plan an ILS to 4 right in Boston. Let's see here. Star Roebuck 3, and we join it at Ruiz. All right, Ruse. ILS 4 right via Goshi. Now there is some debate about whether or not to have the approach via in there because this is a straight in transition, and when we look at it, you'll see what I mean. It goes straight in. We will leave the via in there. Very often, if you get a star that has a downwind that does not automatically link to the approach, don't put the approach vias because the FMS will close the approach for you, and you'll end up making the turn onto the approach when you're not supposed to, when you're supposed to still be on a vector on the downwind. So don't put in that approach via, just unless it's a straight in transition. All right, so that's what we need. ILS 4 right. The Goshi transition is fine for today. Roebuck 3 arrival. Ruse transition. Insert that. All right, and then we can go ahead and have a quick look through here and make sure this matches what we've got here. So Faith 3 as far as VAP, so Faith 3 to VAP, then we do Q87 as far as JROS. So I see Q87 to JROS, direct to Yerk, and it still has Q87 here actually to Yerk. Q97 actually. Q87 to Yerk, Q97 to Yerk. It's fine. JROS is direct anyways. There's no other waypoint in between there. And then Q97 as far as Hetty. So I can see all the Q97s in there. Q97 as far as Hetty. And then direct Charlie, direct Ruiz, and that's where the Roebuck 3 arrival starts, is at Ruiz. And then that takes us through to Goshi, where we start the ILS there. So that is all correct. This sometimes works and sometimes doesn't. I don't know why. Sometimes you can store it and sometimes you can't. Some days it wants to work. Put in a name for the company route, store it. Some days it works in the system, some days it doesn't. I don't know the logic behind it, so why that particular system doesn't work. So Anyways, RadNav page, we don't need to adjust the tuning on anything. It's going to automatically tune our ILS for the outbound, so we can center the localizer and verify. Secondary, we do need to recopy this because the secondary didn't have the SIDS and stars in it. So in order to make sure we store the SIDS and the stars as well, now we recopy it. It's all in there. And then depending on the weather at your departure point, putting an immediate return is actually not a half bad idea. So you can go to any waypoint where you think you might have to turn around. So I'm just going to go to Faith and put in a new destination for the secondary of back to Orlando. And this way, if you have something that happens on the departure, you can very quickly, in about 4 steps, be ready for the arrival. So after Faith, it's got a discontinuity. It goes right back to Orlando here in the secondary. Put in an approach, I think 3... Yeah, I would put in 3-6 right for the ILS as well, because it's a long runway. So ILS 3-6 right, very straightforward, no star, just a straight up ILS 3-6 right. So after Faith, you'll see it's just got a couple of waypoints here, straight in Silky, J-Core, 3-6 right. So if you need to do an immediate return, it's set up now, very quick immediate return. Back to the init pages, to the Bravo page. Point 2 for the taxi out's very reasonable. Let's see here. I like to use just 0 for the route reserve and let any route reserve we have show as extra. It's calculated in the flight plan anyway, so it's already been compensated for, so we don't need to put it in there. Alternate fuel 1.8, call it 1.9 actually, round it up, sorry, 1.9 for the alternative JFK, and the final reserve of 1.1 rounded. Perfect. ZFW, so you could pull that out of your flight plan, estimated ZFW, and actually it was right here, I think, too, wasn't it? ZFW per the flight plan is expected to be 58.2. However, if you've gotten a message, nope, what am I doing here? MCDU, ATSU, AOC, check to see if you have a load message already, because if you have load numbers already received from the company, use those. The ones you get by ACARS are going to be more up to date than the ones that were necessarily that were in the flight plan published a little while ago. It looks like it says the same thing, 58.3. So 58. Come on, 50. Oops. 58.3. And then the 0 fuel weight C of G, 32.6. 32.6. Looks like they think they're done boarding, so it sounds like the bridge is coming off. Block fuel 9.8 is in the tanks right now. Perfect. And that should give us a takeoff weight. I haven't actually done a takeoff calculation here, so I might as well do that in a second here. But you could validate that against your takeoff weight. And then your trip wind. So the average wind component. Let's see here. Does it give it in here? Nope. But we can go to the raw. It's usually right here somewhere on the first page or so. Let's see here. Average wind component plus 12. So we have a plus 12 knot tailwind on average. Let the numbers recalculate and just quickly compare them. So our let's see, here's the burn on here. No, so can't go to just the raw data here. So our trip fuel is expected to be 6.2. It's got 6.5, 222. The time's pretty reasonable. It's within a small margin anyways. And then the extra fuel. Why does it give me an extra of minus 16.8? There's something not right here. Expected fuel on board 3.3. So why? And this is why we do it, is because if there's a discrepancy, you want to know about it. This is in kilograms, right? Yeah, 9.8 kilograms. Supposedly what we're going to need, 6.2. 9.5. Let's see here. Total distance. Let's do this first.
Southwest 3614 is airborne passing 15.
Total distance 1,026. I've got 1012. It's very close. So why am I showing so much extra fuel burn? That's very odd. Let's just have a look here at the nav log, because that's very weird, and I'd like to figure out what this discrepancy is. So let's go to LD 6.2. No, that all looks good. So why am I showing? Let's see here. So let's go a little further up here. At CCC 3.7. Yeah, 3.6 is very reasonable. 3.3. So why is my fuel page showing minus 16.8 extra? That is very... Oh! That's why. 1.9. That's better. Alright, resolve that discrepancy. You had a discrepancy, and that's a little better now. Alright, 1.9. That's better. So 0.3 extra. It says we're going to burn a little more, so 0.6 is what we should have. And let's see here. Oh, I did it again. I did it again. Instead of minutes, I put kilos for the extra fuel. I really wanted minutes. Why does it default to kilos? Why would it not default to minutes, honestly? All right, let's redo this flight plan because obviously me as the dispatcher, I screwed up again. And you think I would learn from my mistakes, but no, I did not. That's why the fuel is just barely above extra, and it's not a great day out there. I'll be 100% honest. It's the ceilings are kind of low in Boston. They're not terrible, but they're definitely low enough. It's definitely IMC. So the dispatcher reruns the numbers and comes up with a new flight plan that says we should take a block fuel of 11.9. So let's, fortunately we can do this really quite easily here. We can just go in and go config, fuel, and just upgrade this. So we called the fuel truck back, he came back, he put us, he's just going to put us an even 12. So called for 11.9, he's just going to give us an even 12,000. Format error, 12,000. There we go, 12,000 kilos of fuel on board. There we go, perfect. All right, and so let's go back to the Init Bravo page. This should give us a little bit more extra when we put 12 in here. Cruise above, flight level above max flight level. Yeah, okay, so this is going to have some performance effects further down the line. 2.5 extra is much more reasonable if I refetch this now. We should have extra, let's call this 1.8, plus the contingency is another, that's 2.1, 2.2, yeah, 2. We're within reason anyways, so the numbers are reasonable. They're not perfect, but they're pretty reasonable. All right, so the Init Bravo page is done. We can zero the wind back out and actually fetch the winds, and this is the other great thing we can do here because we've preloaded everything from our SimBrief flight plan is just do an ACARS wind request. The only thing I can't request by ACARS is the performance data. I have to actually put that in manually, and we are going to calculate it here on the tablet today. So go to the Takeoff Performance app. The nice thing is we can auto-populate a lot of stuff here. So let's just have a quick look here. Very dark, but so we're planning runway 35 right. 35 right, dry runway, sync load sheet data final, so that's automatically load our takeoff weight and our MAC takeoff weight. We'll take an optimal flap. We won't force toga. Anti-ice is not required. We could probably do a PAX on departure, I would think. Let's sync live weather as well. And we don't need any intersection data. We'll do the full length departure, so we'll just do the calculation here. And it looks like we came up with some good numbers here. So 35 right, no takeoff, shift for dry runway, flaps 1, down 0.1. Flaps 1, down 0.1. Alright, we got a flex temp of 58, and we got 42, 46, 46. So flex temp of 58, 142 for V1, 146 for VR, 146 for V2. Standard transition of 18,000, and across the bottom, it looks like they've got a noise to departure 1090 across the bottom. So let's just adjust this here, 1090, slant 1090, and 1090. Perfect. The only other thing we're going to do is pre-select the green dot speed for the climb, so it just goes to the green dot speed. It doesn't accelerate to 250 right away until we want it to. So it's pre-selected in cruise. We're going to be cruising at, it doesn't have the cruise on this page today. All right. Wind data uplink is in. And just to verify, we go to the init page, alpha, wind, and just make sure it's all blue. If it's green, it's not actually loaded. It's just it's in standby. So you want to make sure all three phases, climb, cruise, and descent, are all blue. That means they're all good. Prog page. Cruising at 370. Our optimal today is 340, and our max 366 because of the extra fuel weight. Yeah, we should probably reduce that cruise down to let's call it 350. So let's, and that's actually, if I, as I look over the flight plan here, that's what it did, 350. And let's just put a distance reference on here. So KMCO runway 35 right. Again, if we need to do an immediate return, you can very quickly see your bearing and distance on this page. And last but not least, let's just verify that the drifts are very within reason. 0.3, 0.4, 0.3, less than 5 miles is good. All right, the box is all set up. Don't have any ATC online to give us a clearance, so we'll make sure we're squawking 2,000. We are. And let's just have a quick look at the box to make sure everything is good for our departure. It's been 20 minutes since I started the APU. Boy, this takes a long time when you're talking through the whole thing. So we get the APU bleed on, reset that timer, and let's just have a look. So put this in plan mode. 20 miles is good. And we're just going to just compare. Let's see here. Let's pick up the departure here. We'll just do a quick comparison. Let's see here. So, flight plan. So, MCU 36 right. So, 35 right. It's heading 005 to intercept course of 033 to cross J-Wolf. Is it 35 right or 36 right? I did 36 right. Shoot. Okay, before I forget, let's adjust the performance here. Let's get that runway corrected. I thought it was 35 right. It's 36 right. So let's recalculate that. I would not think it would adjust the performance too much today, but let's just make sure. All right, so now we've got down 0.1, 62 degree flex. So I believe that's a slightly higher flex. 62, 42, 46. So now we got 54, 54, 55, and 1100 across the board. 154, so it did impact the performance. 154, oops. 154, 155, and now it wants 1100 for each step of the departure here. Thrust reduction, acceleration, and engine out acceleration. There we go. All right, that's a little better. All right, let's go back to just validating this departure is all in here properly. So it's 36 right. It's heading 005 to 600 feet, then direct fax at or above 2300, and I can see fax at or above 2300 there. Then on track 006 across, then on track 006 across hand at or above 3000, hand, and I can see 3000. And at or below 230 knots, so I see the 230 knot max there. Then on track 013 to Buffy. So fax, hands, then Buffy. So we should see Buffy is next there. We do see Buffy's next there. And then after Buffy, Faith above 14,000. I can see the restriction there. Mad Bog above 16,000. And then Bikini, Feminine, Viop. So Bikini, Femon, and VAP, and there we go. So that's the end of our star there. All right, whew. All right, yeah. Are you ready for the departure briefing?
Go ahead.
I'm just going to check here. So FS2 Crew's got a lot of options it brings up automatically when I ask that. Pushback required, radar not required. Config 1 plus F, so he sets it all up correctly. 36 right. I can't believe I have to put in these V speeds manually. 154, 154, 155. I think that was correct. It won't extract anything. And this is one of the few problems with the Fenix is that it doesn't let any data out of the airplane. And I think that's a 62, 35,000. So we'll call it 1100. Oh yeah, 1,000 AGL. And takeoff CFG as well. Jeez Louise. Just wants everything, doesn't it? I'm just going to call it 33. cruise altitude 35,000. Okay. It's not a pack-off takeoff. All right, good stuff. Yeah. Unfortunately, the Fenix does not let a lot of information out, so you got to put a lot of the stuff manually into FS2 Crew, which is annoying. Most other airplanes, they can glean the data itself and figure out what it's doing. All right. Yeah, so the technical status, everything works on the airplane, and NOTAMs. I didn't really look at the NOTAMs, so we should probably have a quick look at those and see if there's anything that affects our departure here. Slide down to NOTAMs for Orlando. So that's Boston. We'll deal with that when we come to it. But Orlando, lots of NOTAMs. Love it. Jeez Louise. Okay, let's go here and just compare. So all I'm going to need to get out to 36 right. Bravo or Charlie and Echo or Foxtrot, essentially. So let's just look for anything affecting those. Bravo, Charlie, Echo, Foxtrot. Well, it looks like a lot of stuff's over here on the other side. Juliet, Kilo, and stuff like that. Okay, so it's not going to affect us too much here. 36 right. Nope. Approach procedures I don't need, and there's nothing about SIDS. Okay, perfect. All right, so nothing affecting our departure process from a NOTAM perspective. The departure today, the Faith 3 RNAV departure. This is plate 20-3 Alpha 1. For Orlando International. No special notes on the plan, and the routing constraints are all as published. Everything is in the box. The top altitude for departure is 16,000. So 16,000 feet is set. Noise abatement, don't believe we have any published for Orlando. Let's just check ref pages. Nope, nothing published for noise abatement. And yeah, level of service not an issue. Weather's fine for today. And yeah, it's not a mountainous airport. Engine failure, we're just going to climb straight ahead to at least 3,000, which is our MSA. Yeah, the takeoff performance we've got in the box is let's see here. No takeoff shift for runway 36 right on dry runway. Flaps 1, 62-degree flex, 154, 154, 155, 1100 across the bottom. The 226 green dot speed carried forward. That's all I've got. Questions and threats. The only threat is really just me trying to get going here. There's lots of stuff going on, and I'm just trying to get this process going here. So I think we're just about ready. Any questions?
No questions.
All right. So like I said, this is the part where I'm going to kind of muddle through because my SOPs do not match at all with what they have. But we do have a load sheet here. This is our final load sheet. So the previous load sheet was just a preliminary. Now they've actually loaded everybody on board. Let's just check and make sure it hasn't changed. So 58.3, sometimes it will change. Phoenix will sometimes randomly change it, which is kind of fun because that's the way the real world is. Things change from the plan. People don't show up. People get off at the last second. Extra people get added. So sometimes you're higher, sometimes you're lower. In this case, the CFG changed. So the weight was the same, but the loading was not quite as originally planned. So the CFG shifted 31.4, so that's adjusted. And that's basically it. So our MAC takeoff weight of 20, looks like 28.9. And so what we could do is just resync this again and just check to make sure that this is not adjusted hour. So 67.9, 28.9, and hit calculate again one more time just to make sure that the trim position didn't change when the CFG, because the CFG will affect the trim position, but no, it's still down 0.1, so I think we're good to go. All right, so yeah, let me just make sure my tracker shows that we are tracking here. Connected pre-flight, love it. Gonna get rid of you. Before start checklist.
Parking brake.
Set.
Takeoff speeds and thrust.
V1 154, VR 154, V2 155, flexing 62 degrees.
V1 154, VR 154, V2 155, flex temp 62 degrees. Windows.
Closed.
Beacon.
On.
Before start checklist completed.
Alright, now normally I wouldn't get the beacon on until I had contact with the ground controller, and remember we had a couple things we actually had to do. We have a couple of outstanding items here, so let's check the batteries again, which is unusual, something we rarely have to do. So it is back to 0, and it should be less than 60 amps. It should have charged by now. And now you can see it's got a nice charge, just barely putting anything in there after it was off, so that's fine. The other thing is that we are not refueling, so we'll get the fuel pumps on here. Let's see here, we do have no fuel in the center tank, so we're going to leave the center tank pumps off, the mode selector manual. And of course with the fuel pumps also goes the seatbelt sign. There, so those are the couple of outstanding items we had to do as well. We didn't talk to ground crew yet at all, but let's see, the APU is available. We can take the ground power off, we do have the APU bleed on. And we can call GSX for pushback. And while they're doing that, the one thing we always need to do manually for some reason in this airplane is then disconnect the ground power. So ground power is available, so ground crew, you're good to disconnect the ground power. And yeah, brakes are
Hello, Captain.
set. We are
ready
good
for
to
pushback.
good to release the shocks. Good to remove the shocks. And there we go. I think we're ready. That took me a long time because I was talking a lot through the whole thing, but thank you guys for sticking with me, and let's get this show on the road. They're just going to pull the tug up really quickly here. Walk in, put in the pin. Most of the time they put the pin in before we ever get going here. And we shouldn't really have the beacon on until we get
Departure
push and
check
everything's
completed.
connected, but anyway.
Bypass pin inserted.
This whole thing is a little bit clunky because, like I said, this does not match my SOPs at all. Everything from here on out is completely not my SOP. So I'm going to try and follow the Fenix FS2 crew SOPs as best I can, which, as I understand it, are pretty close to standard Airbus SOPs. But I'll beg forgiveness because, yeah, there will probably be some points where it's not.
Locking gear.
There will probably be some points where it seems clunky and I'm missing items. It's because they're being done in a location, a time that I'm not used to at all. So the other thing that I will do, besides getting myself back into ARC mode here, is I will just go in here really quickly and just make sure that we have, nope, sorry, it's in the config. Make sure that this has stayed the way I like it. So we do have failures, we do have all failures enabled, and we have a high failure rate. Not that that's going to necessarily make anything happen, but it might. Did she say release the brakes? I'm sorry, I missed that. Say again.
Release parking brakes.
Alright, let's just have a look behind us, make sure nobody is pushing behind us at all. Nobody else is here in Orlando. Alright, so
release parking brakes.
first flight of the day, we've also got to push the brakes again
Start
and
at
make
wheel.
sure we get brake pressure showing there on the yellow system before we actually pressurize everything. Alright, brakes are off, ready for pushback, delaying it start until advised. Howdy, sorry can only drop in momentarily. Hayden UK, that's okay. Nice to see you for a little bit. This stream will be posted on YouTube eventually, so you can always watch it after the fact as well. Alright, I think she said we're good to start engines in the push, so start engines 2 and 1. Alright, AP bleeds on. To start, wait for the X's to go away to indicate that the FADEX have powered up properly, and away we go with an engine start. This is one of those cases where it's nice to have two people because the captain usually monitors the movement of the aircraft, communicates with the ATC and the ground crew, while the first officer is focused on the engine start and potentially aborting the engine start if anything goes wrong. Always a little bit fun to kind of do this in MSFS where you're just playing all the roles. So things happen a little bit slower than you would like oftentimes in MSFS, just because you've got so many roles to play. Doing the work of two people all at once. Hopefully this works out okay. Yeah, I think it's going to work out okay. One thing I will say about this Orlando scenery, it's not flat. And I complain about Microsoft not having flat airports. Well, there's a lot of undulations in the pavement of this airport, so while we're taxing, please don't mind any of that. Alright, looks like we got a good start on number 2. The gray box is gone, which means we can start number 1, and I always like to see everything stabled. 20, 40, 60, 30 is kind of what you're looking for. The fuel flow is a little high in the Fenix 320, but otherwise everything else looks good, so we'll start engine 1. And she asked us to set the brakes.
Cockpit to ground. We have a good engine.
Brakes are set, confirm the pins removed.
Unlocking gear.
Make sure this nose wheel steering disconnect disappears. For the love of God, make sure that disappears before you release the ground crew. Alright, that's gone. And when they come back, you can tell them to revert to hand signals and have a great day. KMCO is horrible in MSFS. I think they placed hidden sinkholes. Yes, absolutely, 100%. It is horrible in MSFS. There's way the terrain is just crazy. There is, like you can see right there, there's a little undulation right there.
Bypass pin removed.
And all over the taxiways here, unfortunately. There's all
Left is
sorts
clear.
of things like that.
Right is clear.
And I've complained in the past that airports in MSFS shouldn't be level, and that's right, the airports shouldn't be level, but there shouldn't also be huge sinkholes and stuff like this. Like, the taxiway itself goes up and down a hill, but not like, you know, not like off-roading here like you're going to see sometimes when we taxi here. That's the one thing I don't like about this airport. I think the Taxi to Gate put one out, so I was thinking about it. I might still pick it up one day. Alright, so we got 20, 40, 60, 30, so they run a little hotter, a little more power, a little more fuel consumption than they should, but ideally around 20, 40, 60, 30 is what you're looking for. All the other engine parameters are normal. We've got oil pressure. Oil's really quite hot considering these engines were stone cold, 125 degrees in 10 seconds. That is highly unrealistic. But anyways, what do we do next? And now we're into all these flows. So I have to make sure that I actually look at this because honestly, this is not the way we operate at all. So let's see here. Yeah, once the engine starts complete, we can kill that. All right, so. Engine mode normal, APU bleed off, anti-ice is required, APU master can go off, ECAM status is checked. Check the recall as well. Nose wheel steering disconnect memo is not displayed, yep. And also at the same time, supposed to arm the spoilers, rudder check 0, flaps set to 1, he's done this, good, pitch trim should be set. And it's not. It should be 0.1 down. And we would have a substantial checklist for this, and ECAM status also checked. All right, and that's it. So we call after start checklist.
Anti-ice.
Off.
ECAM status.
Checked.
Pitch trim.
0.1 nose down set. Set and checked.
Rudder trim.
Neutral.
After start checklist completed.
Yeah, see, our checklist is so completely different from that. I'm just having a hard time even with this. But anyways, we're trying it. Alright. Clear left side.
Clear right side.
I don't like the extra lights when we're taxiing either. Alright, give her a bit of power because the bus tends to take some power to get moving. Very seldom will the bus move at idle thrust. She needs power to get going. Once she kind of gets going, she's alright, but she needs power to get going. Alright, and we are underway. Season 11 underway. We've got it going here. The Fenix is kind of holding up alright here. The frame rate's looking okay. Other than the fact that I'm very fuzzy for some reason that I don't understand. It seems like it's very low resolution. I don't know what's going on with that camera, so I'm not going to mess with it right now. You can kind of see me, and I will fix it for the next stream. I will mess with it after this. I don't use this camera for much else besides streaming, so until I actually streamed, I didn't know that it was not working out here. All right, so we're going to make it left off the apron here, and then it's going to be. Let's have a quick look here. I'm going to make a radio call momentarily. So we're going to do Echo 1, Echo Bravo, Bravo 10. Orlando traffic, JetBlue 1282 is taxiing for departure runway 36 right via Echo Bravo Bravo 10. And there was a pretty substantial little bump there. Yeah, this Orlando scenery is just horrible. I think Taxi to Gate has released a payware. Looks like I have a patch of hair on my left side. Yeah, yeah, that's just like the light shining on it, but because it's fuzzy, it looks terrible. I also need a haircut. It's been a little while since I got a haircut, I'll admit that. Alright, and then I think there's a taxi flow. I honestly, I have to pull this out because this is very different from what we do at work. Yeah, there's a taxi flow here, so let's focus on what we're doing here for a second. We do flows, but everything's backed up with a checklist. Alright, so it should be the second left here. Alright, so taxi flow. Terrain on ND is required, so not required for today. And pilot 2 action, so he should get a bunch of stuff done here. I'm not sure how to trigger him to do it. Oh, you know what I haven't done yet?
Set.
Brake check.
Pressure 0.
I wonder if the flight control check will trigger him to do it. Woohoo! 3 months. Thank you, Hayden UK. Appreciate it. You're just funding this project in the long run. Really, I make a very small amount of revenue from all of my streaming and everything that I do. I don't have all that many people watching, so it just pays for everything you're seeing here, the scenery. So I should really take the next time I get a paycheck and buy the Orlando scenery, because this, yeah, it's not terrible. But boy, yeah, like there's just so many hills and undulations in it here in MSFS. It's almost untenable. So right, left turn down here to get to 36 right, and then once we get straightened out, we'll do the flight controls check here. Flight controls check.
Ready.
Full left. Full left. Full right. I don't even know how to get this to trigger. Perform the rudder test, full left rudder, and then full right rudder. That's what I did. Full left. Full right. You shouldn't do that while you're taxiing, but anyways. Didn't seem to recognize that I was doing it.
Full up. Full down. Neutral. Full left. Full right. Neutral.
Rudder.
Full left. Full right. Neutral.
Alright, and then I think this is going to make him, yeah, I see the auto brakes going to max. This makes the FO do all his taxi flows once the flight control check's complete. So I do that, and then he does his whole thing. Train on ND is not required for me today. Why do I not have... Oh, I never got the flight directors on when I was shooting past here. Never even noticed that. See, and again, I would have noticed that... We have like 2 reviews, I would have noticed that before, but never noticed that here. Alright. They must have been on before, because we did the control check at F1, FD2 and everything. Taxi checklist.
Flight controls.
Checked.
Checked. Flap setting.
Config 1+F.
Config 1+F. Radar and predictive wind shear system.
On. On and auto.
Engine mode selector.
Normal.
ECAM memo.
Takeoff no blue.
Taxi checklist completed.
Alright, one last thing. We're just going to pull around the corner here, and I'm going to look at the FS2 crew lineup flow.
Our pre-flight safety briefing. We are now going to take you through our safety procedures and equipment. As this information is
acceleration and climb really is just the FO's jobs.
The safety card in your seats area shows details of escape routes.
Okay.
Masks,
I think I know what I'm doing here. Who's ready for this?
Position, which you must adopt in an emergency landing.
Orlando traffic, JetBlue 1282, take position runway 36 right for departure, face 3, departure northbound.
And 2 at the front and rear of each other cabin. On the upper deck, there is an emergency exit on each side, in the middle of the cabin. In the unlikely event of having to use the escape slide, leave all hand baggage behind and
cleared for departure.
Shoes, as they may tear the slide.
Takeoff runway confirmed. Approach path clear of traffic.
Please now ensure that your table is folded away, your seat back is upright with the armrest
Clear.
down
Cabin crew,
and your
be seated
seatbelt
for takeoff.
fastened. The seatbelt is fastened and adjusted
Alright,
like
it
this,
is 36 right on the pavement.
and unfastened like this.
Nobody's arriving on the left.
When
Nobody's
the
arriving departing on the
seatbelt
right.
signs are on, you must go back to your seat
Lineup
and fasten
checklist.
your seatbelt securely.
Takeoff runway.
For your own comfort
Confirmed.
and safety, we recommend you keep your
Runway
seatbelt fastened at all
36
times
right
visible
confirmed.
to avoid being
TCAS.
disturbed in flight.
TARA
Packs 1 and 2.
on.
The cabin air supplies
Lineup
fail,
checklist
oxygen
completed.
will be provided.
Alright, we ready guys?
Masks like this will appear automatically.
Alright, lights are all
Stay
on.
in your seat
Here we
until
go.
the mask towards you.
50%.
We'll open your oxygen supply.
Let the engine
Place the mask
stabilize
over
for a
your mouth
second.
and nose like this,
Roger.
and breathe normally, adjusting the band to secure it. Do make sure
Take
your
off.
own mask is fitted before
Check.
helping anyone else.
Fine, there it is. Nope.
Your life jacket is underneath.
Manflex 62, auto thrust
In the
blade.
event of landing on water, remove the life jacket from its container and put it over your head. Pass the tapes round your waist.
Manflex Toga SRS. Manflex 62 SRS
Thrust
runway.
set 100 knots.
Roger.
Checked.
Pull the red toggle as shown. The air can be topped up by using the mouthpiece. There is a whistle here for attracting attention. Do not inflate your life jacket until you are outside the
V1,
aircraft.
rotate.
We will supply life cots for babies and life jackets for infants.
Positive
Finally,
climb.
ladies and gentlemen,
Gear up.
please study the safety card and take
Gear
notice
up.
of the fasten seatbelt sign. May we remind you that electrical portable items such as games, computing and word processing equipment may interfere with the aircraft systems and must be switched off during takeoff and landing. Portable telephones must be switched off while the aircraft engines are running. As this is a no smoking service, the no smoking sign
Set
will
speed
remain on
222.
for the duration of the flight. Smoking is not permitted at any time whilst on board. If you have any questions, please ask one of the crew. Thank you.
Alright, speed. Climb, alt blue, nav, autopilot 1. And 1 MT2.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
Let's climb. Flaps 1.
Speed checked. Flaps 1.
Flap 0.
Speed checked. Radar altimeter alive. Flaps 0.
Orlando traffic, JetBlue 1282 is airborne off runway 36 right northbound on the Phase 3 departure, final call. Should be doing everything here, but maybe not. Autopilot 1 on. I don't believe they actually have an after takeoff checklist, do they? Lineup, departure, yeah, approach checklist, the next checklist. So that's it. For some reason, he's forgotten to disarm the spoilers. So let's just disarm them now. And away we go. So that was a little bit awkward because the one thing that is awkward about this airplane is the fact that you've got to find the D10. And I don't have an actual D10 on my honeycomb thrust quadrant, so I'm trying to find it sometimes, and sometimes I've actually had to kind of look down and say, hey, it is in the takeoff D10, or you go just a little bit too far, it comes back out. So for whatever reason, that kicked off the flight directors for the departure, which is fine. Just rotate to 15 degrees nose up if you're two engine, or rotate to 12.5 if you're single engine. All right, there is speed. Manage speed. The only trouble is, of course, we also lost nav there, but you don't panic about it. You just simply let the aircraft fly. It'll still get airborne. You can still fly it like a normal airplane. You can watch the airspeed, and once you get to 1,000 feet, you can kick in. And the auto thrust actually was what stayed armed, which is funny because normally for a flight director takeoff where the flight directors drop, you'll lose the auto thrust as well, which can create a real headache when you try to re-engage the auto thrust, and all of a sudden the engines go back to idle because they're trying to go to a slower speed. So yeah, it can be very awkward to lose the flight directors on takeoff, but you just try to fly it normally. If we'd talked to ATC, I would have said we've just had a navigation failure. We're going to continue runway heading mode until we get re-established. All right, we got ourselves underway though. Yeah, and I think all that happened was just because I went to flex. I went past flex, and then I tried to get back into flex. I was kind of just back and forth, just trying to find it. It dropped the flight directors there. Not a big deal though. We got her airborne. We are underway. And I'm just not sure why it did not like the Yeah. If I didn't disarm the ground spoiler itself, there's 10,000. Alright, so 10,200 climbing, 16,000. And we got 310 for the climb speed set. Alright, let's go ahead and set our cruise altitude now since we don't have any ATC still for 35. It's too far. Alright, flight level 350 is set. And here comes the managed speed, and away we go. We are now on our way, and the performance is really not too bad, all things considered. I'm pretty impressed. If I do look around quickly, we do lose some things here. The other thing the FO doesn't do in this is doesn't turn off the taxi lights, which should pretty much happen with the flat retraction. So I don't know why he didn't get the taxi lights off, off, but that's, anyways. Like I said, just trying to kind of learn through this whole thing here. Exterior lights, yeah, should be set in the acceleration. So somehow, I think because it heard me say flaps 2, it really messed up the flow of that part as well. Because then it didn't disarm the spoilers. I don't know if he checked the gear was up, and he did not reset the exterior lights. So yeah, okay. And again, like I said, and I'm going to just ask for your apologies or ask for your forgiveness. It's going to be clunky. It's going to be very clunky because these SOPs do not match the SOPs that I'm used to. We have our airline has set up some very different SOPs, partly just from the years flying the aircraft, partly from trying to have a little bit of commonality between the Boeing and the Airbus fleet, which is not easy to do. Because they're very different, but trying to have certain policies at least try to be somewhat similar between the two aircraft, so that when people do transfer from one airplane to the other, they're not relearning everything. Not everything is completely, totally different. So let's see here. Are we going to hit faith above 14,000? I think we are here. We've got 6.4 miles. We're climbing pretty well here. We're climbing pretty well for a 320 here. And yeah, so we are definitely underway, and it's looking pretty good here. It's working out pretty well. Alright, so there's the 14,000. We also need to be 16,000 by Mad Bog. So we still have 4 miles to faith, so I think this is going to be just fine here. Just going to watch this to make sure we meet these restrictions, and then we'll have some chats about various things. Probably one of the most exciting things, and I think I mentioned this last time, and I definitely mentioned this on my ATC stream at least once, is that I am super excited for the growing Fenix 320 family. Alright, still haven't even passed faith. We're through 15,000. We got 1,000 more to go. I don't think we're going to have a problem meeting that restriction of Mad Bug there. But the growing Fenix family has got me pretty overall excited. The idea of being able to fly the 319 and the 321. Those are both going to be welcome additions. I really like the 321. I really think the 321 really made the 320 family. The 320, like the 320 by itself was a good airplane. It's got to have a middling airplane, but the 321, just for its sheer capacity and range, it really kind of, I think it completed the 320 family very nicely. The 320 itself is a nice airplane, don't get me wrong. It's a very nice airplane, and Fenix has done a fantastic job modeling it here. This is their lovely jet blue paint job here. The blue control with the mosaic tail there. And I just love that every jet blue tail I think that's also kind of fun. I love fun aircraft. But yeah, I think the 321 really, out of the whole family, is my favorite airplane. She's a beast, but in a good way. She does not have a whole lot of extra power, and she does kind of struggle to get to cruise altitude when you've got a full load of people and a full load of fuel, and you're climbing up to 31 or 32 or 33. That last couple thousand feet, you just scraping up there, especially if you're at a higher speed. If you're climbing at 320 or 330 or something like that. Standard set. This guy does not even wants me to say QNH set. I'm like, I don't think so. Is there an option? I wonder. I don't think there is. Not have to talk about QNH, because we don't talk about QNH in the Airbus. Not in North America. Nope. That's fine. I don't see that anywhere. That's fine. Standard is set and cross-checked. Yeah, I just the 321. She's such a beast, but that's a nice thing in a lot of ways. She's very stable. When you're doing a takeoff, she'll rotate. She'll rotate when you want her to, but she won't she won't usually make any sudden maneuvers, and likewise on landing, you're not going to find too many sudden maneuvers on landing. It's not going to suddenly, gusts of wind are not going to push that airplane around very much. It's once you establish it on a trajectory, it's going to kind of keep going in that same trajectory until you do something change it. Wind usually will not cause too many little bounces or sudden variations on final, and I like that. I think it's a nice airplane. It also lands really nicely as well, I find. I think out of the whole family, it lands pretty. I think it lands nicest of all. It does have a little bit more of a tail strike limitation. 7.5 degrees is the limit, is the pitch limit for touchdown. Anything higher than that, and you are at risk of striking the tail. The tail is way back here. The 321 is almost 50% longer, but 35% longer, I think, than the 320. So it's a substantially longer airplane, but it's just got so much more heft to it. The only drawback of the 321, and when you guys start flying this 321 again from Phoenix, the biggest thing to watch out for is just getting it slowed down for that first notch of flaps. The descents, especially if you're flying the idealized planned descent path, you're often descending at idle thrust, and she does not want to slow down very easily. And and oftentimes, especially if you're fully loaded, your green dot speed will not be very far below your flap speed, so you'll have only a very small margin that you can slow down to be below the flaps 1 speed, without going below like the green dot speed. So once you can get that first notch of flaps, then usually you're okay from that point. But sometimes trying to get that first notch of flaps out there when you're doing a continuous descent and right into an approach like we're going to do in Boston today in a 321. Just getting it slowed down enough to that first notch of flaps can sometimes be a bit of a challenge. And even then, sometimes she does not want to slow down too much. You really need to get flaps too early on in that airplane as well, if you're fully loaded. If it's fully loaded to full of passengers, even getting, once you start downhill on a 3-degree glide slope with only flaps 1, she'll gain speed at idle. You'll need to get flaps 2 for those glide slopes. But other than that, I like the 321 best of all. But the 319 is kind of fun in its own right too. And I have to say, I like the 319 as well. The 319 is just, when you've flown the 321 and then you fly the 319, it's just, the difference is night and day. The thing just leaps off the runway. I actually flew the 319 last night, and we had basically a half load of people on it last night, and not a whole lot of fuel either, because it wasn't a particularly long flight. This thing just leaped off the runway. I think the rotation speed was like 121 or 123 or something like that, and we got there and the thing just wanted to go flying. It actually wanted to go flying as a little rocket ship. It just climbed up at like 4,000, 5,000 feet per minute when climbing at the V2 speed plus 20. It was just like, the thing just climbs like crazy, and it slows down nicely, easily. Even at the first flaps 3 landing I've done in a while. We don't do a lot of flaps 3 landings, we're usually pretty heavily loaded, but I did a flaps 3 landing for the first time in a while. In the 319, because with a half load, it was like, even then there was so much extra runway. It wasn't even close. I mean, we it would have been tighter with full flaps and a full load than it was with the 319 last night. So the 319 is a fun airplane. That being said, too, the other thing, and I wonder if Phoenix is going to simulate this well, the 319 is a noisy beast. Those engines are substantially closer to you. It is a really, really noisy machine in the flight deck. The 321, the engines are so far away. I'm not usually one for headsets off in the flight deck during flight, but during cruise we're allowed to do it, and I often will do it in the 321 because the engines are so far away. It's quiet. You have to kind of look at the engine instruments and say, yeah, no, they are still turning. They're out there somewhere turning, but they're just so far behind you, you barely even notice them. Whereas the 319, they're so close to you. It's a very noisy flight deck, but it's fun just because it has that performance. So it'll be interesting to see how well Phoenix models that. I'm hoping and assuming that they're going to do a good job, because they have done a pretty good job with the 320. I assume they're working on making sure the performance numbers are accurate. You're going to see that those 319s just climb like rocket ships. Coming, doing the normal level off to try and get below the arrival traffic, and we were ready to level off about less than 3 minutes after takeoff, and then we were level for like 7 or 8 minutes till we got under the arrival streams yesterday. It was a long time just to get through. Long time just leveled off because we had so much extra power. We were just at 7,000 in just a matter of, like I said, less than 3 minutes. Probably had 2.5 minutes for 7,000, and we just trucked along at 7,000 for another 5 or 6 minutes before we climbed again. Not the case in the 321. 321, you take off from Calgary eastbound with a full load, and you're level and cruise by maybe Winnipeg, like you use up like a couple hundred miles to get that thing up to altitude. It will be interesting to see how well Fenix models this and how the and the performance differences. Really, there's not a whole lot of other differences. There are a few other differences. The fuel system is different in the 321 versus the 320. It has the single wing tank. There's no outer inner wing tank. It just has the single wing tank, and it also doesn't have the center tank pumps because it has a center tank transfer system. So with the 321, instead of having 2 pumps in the center tank, they actually have 2 jet pumps that just transfer fuel from the center tank directly to the inner tank. So they don't go from the center tank directly to the engine. They go from the center tank to the inner tank. And it's not an electric pump. It's actually a valve, and it's just a jet pump. So excess fuel flow that's going to the engine is also sent over to the jet pump, which also just sucks fuel over from the center tank. So it's not that different of an architecture, but it is a little bit different. The way you have to react is a little bit different. All right, I should make sure that some of the stuff that that need to be done at 10,000 was done here. So Brad, now if we didn't have anything tuned on there, secondary, we didn't need the immediate return, so we can just recopy our active now and keep the active going here. And prog page is just reconfirmed, nothing changed after our finals. We are still good to 369, our cruise at 350, so that's fine. And yeah, let's also just check, make sure the cabin is pressurizing. Yeah, it is pressurizing here. We should have the guard frequency up on channel 2. There we go. Hopefully nobody is messing around on the guard frequency on VATSIM. And last but not least, a fuel check. Make sure all the fuel is accounted for. So we have used 1,700 kilos, 10.2 in the tank, so that takes us up to basically just shy of 12, 11, 9 and change. So that is very much within reason. No fuel leak. The fuel is all accounted for. All right, we are underway, and let's see here. I have a quick little update here. How are we looking? So for our let's see here, arrival 15:44. So what time's the clock say on here? 13:34. Why is this clock not correct? Why is this clock not correct? Why is it not even close to correct? Sim time is live, I'm pretty sure. I booted it up with live sim time. I did, for some reason. There we go. Now the clock is correct, which will now mean 17:21. That's a much more realistic time. Okay. That was weird. It's not unusual though. I see that happen from time to time. Where the sim clock, for some reason, you boot it up, but it's for whatever reason, when it fetches the time when it starts up, it doesn't fetch the correct time. It happens once in a while. So, yeah, there we are. We're underway in the Fenix. What else can I talk about? I mean, I do have to say, like, I like so many things about the Fenix. First of all, like the modeling is just fantastic. Like the interior model, it's very good. Like everything is where it should be. It's all functional. Like things like the compass coming down, like that's really nicely done. What can I say? Like everything pretty much works in this flight deck. I don't think I can pick up the interphone, but pretty much everything else works. Like I could do the manual gear extension if I wanted to. If I can reach down there, grab that knob, I can do the manual gear extension, and it works. I've done it in this sim. Pretty much everything you can imagine. You can deploy the RAT. You can do an electrical failure. You can deploy the RAT. Everything in this aircraft functions pretty much the way it should. I can't think of too many things I've ever really come across in this aircraft, and I've flown this for quite a number of hours. I use this as a training tool to learn the A320, and I can't find too many things that it doesn't do right. Now there are some little variations and things that are a little different. And they're mostly very minor. Part of the problem is just it's not a problem, but part of the cause of that is just the evolution of the A320 platform. So the A320 has been around for basically 40 years now, I think. It's been that long. 35 years. And over that time, and I think this speaks a lot to the I didn't used to be a big Airbus fan, and I've really kind of come around. I've seen a lot of what goes into this airplane, a lot of the thought that goes into it. The engineering behind it is really quite impressive, and I think that I think there's a lot to be said for the Airbus engineers, and a lot to be said for their forward thinking when they designed this airplane. So, you know, this is a 35-year-old airframe now. Like, this is not a new airframe, but they designed it in such a modular way that various components can be upgraded, and as long as it provides the same outputs and receives the same inputs, you can swap out different components, and most of the rest of the airplane doesn't notice a difference. So to think of some of the more key changes that have happened over the years, first of all, the addition of GPS. GPS didn't used to exist when the Airbus was created. GPS was not a system that existed outside of the U.S. military. Only the U.S. military could really use it. It was not something that could be used. So the original Airbuses, none of them had GPSs. You know, for operators that were operating older aircraft, some didn't think it was worth the extra money to operate an upgraded GPS. And you know, up until the last decade, there were Airbuses still flying around that did not have GPSs in them. You know, and it still worked the same, still functioned the same. The only difference is that instead of gathering your data from the GPS, you would gather it from just from an IRS. You'd have to initialize the IRS, and you'd have a DME updating system as well that would verify your position by just interrogating various DMEs along your route, validating your distance from them. It didn't really affect the way the pilots flew the airplane. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that Airbus has been very good about, is that most of the time the changes that are made are usually a lot of behind-the-scenes stuff, but it doesn't usually affect how the aircraft flies, specifically how the pilot flies the aircraft. So, you know, you still program in the route the same way. It's just that the information about how the position is being determined and being monitored is different. Another big change that comes to mind immediately is the screens. In the original version of the Airbus, they were all CRTs, and there are still lots of Airbuses that are flying around that have CRT screens. But then, I want to say 2003, I think Airbus made LCDs, liquid crystal displays, standard. So now you have nice flat screen technology, but they created in such a way that basically you swapped out the old screens for new screens. You know, the architecture of how the screens failed, what they displayed on them was basically more or less the same. What they did with the LCDs is they did increase the amount of data. The resolution increased with the LCDs versus the CRTs. The CRTs were kind of a really low resolution. Think of your old school TVs. They still did the job, but when they upgraded the LCDs, they got a much higher resolution. They were able to put more data on these pages. 342 climbing 350. So they were able to put more data on each page, display more stuff more accurately, more just a finer resolution. You know, but you can hop out of an old Airbus into a new Airbus, and it looks more or less the same. Okay, the fuel might be on this corner instead of down here, and you know, like a couple of things might move around a little bit, but basically it's the same layout. So I think that's one of the things that really has helped the longevity of the Airbus platform, and even with the Neo generation, is that for the most part on the inside they look the same. The differences are so minor that you fly them the same way as you did before. The information's still right where you want it before, so you get the information out the same way as you did before. So it hasn't, even as they've updated systems and various stuff over the years, it hasn't changed the flying very much. Another new innovation that is that's coming slowly into the aircraft, I think it's on most new aircraft, but it's slowly being retrofitted onto older aircraft for airlines that want it, is TCAS flight director commands. There's Mach Alt Star. So, you know, in the olden days, if you had a TCAS RA, climb, then you would have to disengage the autopilot and manually fly it, and you get like a little red band, green band on the vertical speed. You'd have to put the vertical speed into the green band, and you do that. Now, there's Mach Alt Cruise. Now, with the new TCAS flight directors, the autopilot can actually fly RAs for you. Like when you get a TCAS resolution, it will arm TA mode. When you get a traffic advisory, it'll arm TCAS mode, and then when you actually get the resolution advisory, climb, the TCAS mode will become active in the vertical mode, and you will the autopilot will climb. It will execute a climb, and it will put the airplane in the green band. You still have to monitor it and make sure it gets there, and if it doesn't, you might have to intervene yourself. But it should fly the TCAS RAs completely on autopilot. You don't have to disconnect the autopilot to fly the TCAS RAs. that's a relatively new innovation. Just the last couple of years, they started releasing it via software update, and operators have started retrofitting their fleets because it's a useful tool. It just takes, a TCAS RA can be a very sudden, shocking event, often unexpected, and it just takes the workload down a notch if you let the autopilot in. Instead of me having to worry about flying the airplane, I'm now letting the airplane fly the airplane, and I'm now monitoring to make sure it's doing exactly what it needs to do, and if it's not, then I can step in and I can take over. But switched again more from the active flying to the monitoring role, and the Airbus is great for that. There's a lot of things that really make it great for monitoring. It flies the airplane very nicely on its own for the most part. Alright, there goes VAP, and we just leveled off in cruise, so I really should do a cruise check here to make sure we are staying on task here. So let me pull up my... Here we are. Alright. So we just leveled off in cruise. Oop. And I'm pretty sure the FO did a good job of getting us a takeoff time here. So 25 minutes, so 15:19. Yeah, so call it 14:55 we probably took off. Let's call it 14:55. Let's bring that back. So we probably took off at blue. Why can't we go blue here? So out of Orlando at 14:55, over VAP at 15:19. 15:19. Wow, apparently I can't type today. There we go. And fuel in the tanks right now of 9.8. Now, there's a discrepancy here because it's actually the old flight plan that I had. So we had 9.8 to start originally, and I loaded an additional 2.2. So 7.7 plus 2.2 would be 9.7. So we're pretty much right where we should be on the fuel, maybe up 100 kilos on the fuel, so that's not too bad. 15:19, and we actually were a little bit early because we leveled off before VAP. We expected to level off 1 minute after VAP, so it's very close anyways. 15:20, and let's just jot these in here really quickly so that we are ready to do future fuel checks when the time comes. Certainly plenty of waypoints on this flight today. I'm not doing the math wrong here. on live on stream. It's not hard math. It's not my math skills that need help, it's my typing skills that need help. So 16:29. Let's see here. Start down at 16:55. Boy, there's a lot of waypoints on this flight plan. 9 and 17 and 15, and I think that's pretty close to what we've got in the box there. I think we've got fuel prediction page 1720. Yeah, within reason, anyways. Very much within reason. All right, we are underway, guys. Anything you want to ask me about the A320 right now is a good time to ask. Otherwise, I'll start yammering on about other stuff. But of course, now that we are level in cruise, we should do just a quick cruise procedure, make sure that everything is as it should be. So you just take another look around the flight deck. Make sure that all the switches that need to be dark are dark. The center tank pumps and the mode selector are all on because we have the center tank manually disarmed, manually turned off just because there's nothing in the center tank to drain out. So we just keep the wear down on the pumps there. Otherwise, everything else is pretty much at 12 o'clock. So everything looks normal. Put this in airport mode just so we can see airports along our route. And the nice thing about this is that your company can define the airport database. So you can actually just have it just show airports that your airplane is capable of, that your company has approved for your operation of your airplane. And it's not to say that other airports might not be in the actual database here, but you can immediately say, okay, these are the airports that the company approves of. You know, if I want to divert somewhere, these are the places I'd like to divert to, please. And if I absolutely have to, if it's a land ASAP red, not land ASAP amber, but land ASAP red, and I got to land somewhere else, and so be it. You know, at the end of the day, you pick the closest airport. ATC helps you find the closest airport, no big deal. But it shows you some of the preferred places that your company might like you to go. Looks like we're just going to be passing Savannah, Georgia. Yeah, there it is, Savannah. That's the airport right there for Savannah. I've been there. It's like a beautiful day up the eastern seaboard. Hurricane Lee is out there somewhere, but it's not really having much of an impact on the weather here. Let's see. All right, so we did all that. We're also just going to have a quick look through all the SD screens here. Make sure that everything looks normal. No MSFS vibration. Bleeds look pretty normal here. 20 degrees. It's pretty warm coming out of there, but it's very much within reason. The pressures are good. Cabin is level. Looks good there. Electrical. Let's see here. 23, 18%. Very normal. Everything is functioning. Hydraulics. Everything's solid. 3,000 psi. Fuel. Yeah, let's come back to the fuel in a second here. APU is off. Conditioning, yeah, 22 is pretty reasonable in the cabin. Doors, everything's still armed. Cockpit oxygen's good. Wheels, we have pressure indicators in these wheels as well. We don't actually have those at work, just temperature indicators. And flight control. And nothing is deflected, everything is right where it should be, nothing's obstructing the airflow. Go back to the fuel page, because we like to do a fuel check every 30 minutes here. So start the timer now. As of right now, again, we burned 23, we're at 96 right now, so that adds up to 11.6, 11.9, so very close to the 12 we started. The margin of error is usually considered to be about 300 kilos. If you have a margin of error more than 300 kilos in your fuel calculations, then you should start looking for that fuel. You might be leaking some of it. But it's very balanced. The temperatures in the tanks are okay, and the fuel is all accounted for. Other thing, because it's the first flight of the day, we have to do a compass check once we're airborne and the aircraft's up and running, so just make sure it's within plus or minus 8 degrees. 8 degrees, yeah, it's pretty much bang on 030, so the magnetic compass is good. And last but not least, an RVSM check, which should be reported on your flight plan. Should you ever get ramped to prove that you did the check. When you first level off in cruise here, 35020, 35020, and 35020. Wow. Usually the there you go. Now you can say it's recorded. If you get ramp checked, you can point to that and say, yep, it's done. Usually the PFDs usually agree with each other quite well, but the standby is often out by a little bit. Surprising that it's that accurate, but I guess in a sim, that's actually kind of what you kind of expect to see. All right, that's basically it. So we are underway. So here is A Pilot's Life Chapter 2, Season 11. So as you can see, we are making our way up the coast here. We're just passing over Savannah, Georgia, on our way up to Boston. And we've got a whole slew of interesting flights. So I picked JetBlue, as you can tell, for this season. One nice thing is that they did give me a substantial pay raise. I think I'm making $52 an hour now. So it's a decent pay raise. Hey, look at this. And I just glanced over and look at this. Today's schedule, or this week's scheduled event on the 17th, so I think it's on Sunday. Yeah, Sunday. They're going from JFK down to Orlando, and you can get extra pay, extra points for participating in that outside of your normal schedule. Let's see here. Inbox, I did get some more salary, so my last stream got me $230. That's not too bad. That was a pretty long flight from Anchorage down to Seattle again. This one's going to net me probably about, this is going to net me about $125, $150 at $52 an hour, 2-something hours. Yeah, somewhere around $150. But quite a substantial pay bump. I think for Alaska, I was getting $37 an hour. So $52 an hour, I'm starting to actually get some decent pay here. So JetBlue's actually turning out to be a pretty good place to work from that perspective. And let's have a look at the schedule that I've got drummed up here, ready to go. So it's kind of nice because it's not too repetitive. We do visit a couple of airports a couple of times. A couple of hubs get visited multiple times, but it's very much not an out and back kind of schedule, which is kind of nice. It just sort of goes all over the place. So once we get to, we're doing Orlando to Boston. After that, we're going to do Boston to San Juan. From San Juan back up to Florida, Tampa. Tampa up to LaGuardia, LaGuardia over to Denver, Denver back to LaGuardia, and then LaGuardia down to New Orleans back to JFK, and then JFK over to Tampa again, Tampa back to JFK. So there's a little bit of back and forth, but there's also kind of, you know, some other kind of triangles and different routings, so it's definitely not as repetitive. I found Alaska was starting to get very repetitive. It felt like everything was just out and back, out and back, out and back. It was either Seattle or Portland. I was in and out of one of those two airports. So this one, there is some repetition in here. There's double LaGuardias, double Tampas, double JFK, but I feel like there is more variety than there has been in some of the past ones. So, and the nice thing is that up and down the eastern seaboard of the U.S., there's a good chance of getting ATC on any given day. Not so much going on right now. Looking, there's a Cleveland Center. We're not going to be through Cleveland, so that's unfortunate. And there's a Toronto arrival on right now, and a Toronto departure. Not a whole lot of along our route right now. There is a tower out in, I think that's Newark. Yeah, that's Newark. Tower's up online. We got 2 hours, so who knows? Maybe Boston will show up. Maybe they won't. Who knows? But we'll keep our fingers crossed. It could happen. But yeah, so we got some good legs to look forward to. None of them are super long. The longest one here is the Boston San Juan, which is 1,400 miles. So that's a good 3 hour and something flight. It's gonna be a pretty long flight. It looks like about 3 hours and 10 is the schedule here. Or is that 4 hours and 10? I'm not sure if San Juan is in a different time zone or not, to be honest. Maybe it's 4 hours and 10. That's a decent flight. And ditto for the JFK to Denver and back, or LaGuardia to Denver and back. That's also pretty long at 1,400. But a lot of these are very reasonable, 900,000, 2 hour flights. Very reasonable flight length. It's not going to be like some of the ones we've done in the past where it's just arduous. I did pick up some new scenery. I did pick up the Anybuilds JFK because I like JFK. I think it's a good airport to fly in and out of. It's very iconic. It's almost overdone, but it is a nice airport to fly in and out of. There is some ATC there, and since we're doing it on the stream, I figured I'd go upgrade from the default. The default was, again, it was okay, but it wasn't great. I'd like to see something a little better for JFK. Basically, for all of these, I think we have payware. Orlando, I think, was the only one I don't have payware. We've got the Fly Tampa Boston. I do have the Latin VFR San Juan. I have the Field Air LaGuardia, which is not great, but it's the only LaGuardia there is, and it's definitely better than the default. Not by a whole lot. It's not great. It's not generally worth what you pay for. The Flight Beam Denver is really nice. I've got the Latin VFR New Orleans as well. That's beautiful. And then Tampa, Vertical Sim Tampa, I'm on the fence about right now. Looks like a real nice scenery, but I have seen a lot of people complain about performance issues with it. So I may have to experiment with it a little bit and decide if it's going to be capable of operating this airplane there, because like I said, it's not bad right now, and the frame rate's been pretty good overall. I can't complain. We're doing 30 frames pretty much solidly right now. When we get to Boston, it'll probably slow to about 20. The scenery in Boston is pretty intense, but it's still pretty good. MSFS does a pretty good job of loading it up, so I'm not overly worried about it today, but I have read some reviews that said that Vertical Sim Tampa, it's beautiful, but it's a real performance hit. So we'll see. I haven't made up my mind about that one yet, to be honest. What else can we talk about? Yeah, so that's basically it. Otherwise, not much else has changed in my pilot's life career. Yeah, just keep on trucking, and let's see here, community. And you look at the stats of what some of these people have flown, and it's insane. I've done nothing compared to what some of these people have flown here. You know, these people have accumulated $200,000 and 244,000 experience points. I have 2,500 experience points. This guy has almost 100 times more experience points than I do. And as you get up there, you can buy stuff that gets you more experience points. And I actually did that. If you check my inventory, one of these things here, I have training for situational awareness, which gives me an extra bonus of 0.25% experience points on every flight. So it's a small little bonus, but it increases it. But yeah, this guy has accumulated 250,000 experience points. This guy has flown like crazy. It's a fun system. I love the hero of the missions. These are the flights you have to fly, and there's a picking and choosing at the start, but then that is really kind of, to me, it's also fairly realistic. Like at the end of the day, for the airline, for airline schedulings, you bid for your schedule like a whole month at a time. You put in some parameters. The airline looks at your parameters when it comes to your seniority number and assigns you some trips and some flights based on what you put in, what's still available, what hasn't already been taken by other people. Boom, and you've got a schedule, and then that's it. That's your schedule for the month. Like, it might change from time to time, but a lot of airlines have trading systems. I have never found trading systems work at airlines, and this is one of my pet peeves. They talk about it like, oh yeah, you guys can trade pairings. It'll be great. You can massage your schedule, make it exactly how you like it, and like, it never works. I have, in 12 years of flying in the airline industry, I have successfully traded either once or twice. It never works properly, and the part of the problem is just the complexity of airline scheduling. It's just it's mind blowing when you start to think about the complexity of scheduling. Just the pilots alone. The pilots are restricted to certain aircraft of their certain type, but they have to have certain rest periods. They have to fly a certain amount. They have a maximum duty period. You have to allow for connections at various airports, like depending on how big the airport is. If you have to go change airplanes, there's got to be a certain minimum amount of time to get from one airplane to the next. Even if that's not the case, you've got to have a reasonable amount of time to turn the airplane around and go do the next flight. I may want these days off. That person may not want these days off. And sometimes the trips are two guys are paired together for a whole 3 or 4 or 5 day trip, and sometimes it's like I had one captain refer to it as speed dating, where like for every 1 or 2 flights that I fly, I change FOs. I got another FO now because just the way the whole system works. Things are not always balanced. So the number of people who want certain days off may vary between the captain side and the FO side. There may be an imbalance in the number of people who are at certain bases. So there may be more captains at this base than FOs, and at the other base there might be more FOs than captains. So we have to kind of assign pairings to kind of balance it out and generate pairings to kind of balance it out. So there will be times where you won't fly with the same person more than once or twice. So if one flight is delayed for whatever reason, it could be weather, it could be mechanical issues, passengers, just gating problems at the airport, long taxi out, whatever reason the airplane's late, one flight being late can just snowball so quickly to and it can easily delay 2 or 3 or 4 further flights. It might even delay 8 or 9 different flights. Because there's so many common resources that the next flights may need, not just the pilots who might split up and the captain goes to one flight and the FO goes to another flight, but also the cabin crew might split up to go to other flights. They might stick together as a team, or 2 of them might go to another flight and then another one goes to another flight. But your ramp crew, if you're late leaving the gate, the ramp crew's not available to go take care of another airplane and marshal another airplane in and unload the next airplane. If you're late off the gate, the next airplane that needs that gate might be out of luck. The next flight that needs to be done on the airplane that you're late on might be out of luck. So one late flight in an airline can snowball sometimes into a half a dozen or more late flights, delayed flights because of one single incident. So it's such a complicated system. But I do like the fact, that like you have a set schedule, and like I said, like I've very seldom managed to change things because of the days off rules and everything. If I need specific days off, I've got to find someone to trade with that has those days off, that they can take whatever I'm doing on that day, and have to have something else that matches. There's also limits to how much we're allowed to fly each month. So usually we kind of have to trade kind of a similar amount of time. Like I've got 5.5 hours and you've got 6.5 hours. Maybe we can trade those together. But I can't just give you 6.5 hours and all of a sudden you're well into overtime. The airline's not going to like that. They will not usually pay overtime if you pick up trade from somebody and just take on a whole bunch more flying. They're like, well, I'm in the overtime. It's like, yeah, but you did that by choice. We didn't ask you to do that. You agreed to pick that up from somebody else. So we're not going to pay overtime for that. But some airlines may just say no because the way the contract's written, they have to pay overtime for it. They're like, no, we're not going to do any trade that gives you more overtime than you were supposed to have. Otherwise, then we would have assigned you. So, I've tried desperately sometimes to trade things when sudden personal incidents have come up in my life. Medical issues, illnesses, events with kids, concerts or sport meets, whatever, things like that. Things come up and then you can't be there because there's just no way to trade. It's just the odds of you finding somebody else who's got who has days off on a trip that you can give away and they have days off on the day you need to give them. it's almost impossible. And then just in case, and if you do manage to find someone like that, and there might be 1 or 2 people in the month, you've got to hope that they don't have those specific days off for a reason. Maybe they are off on those days because they knew about something in advance and they specifically need those days off, so they can't say yes. I mean, I've asked people, and most of the time when they say no, they're very, you know, they're very empathetic about it, and they regret that they have to say no. But it's like, I'm sorry, that's actually the first 3 days of my, that's the first 2 days of my vacation. We're actually leaving on vacation that day. You know, I can't take a pairing from you. You know. Wish I could. If I could help you out, I would. But you know, I've already got my tickets booked on that day or whatever. So yeah, every airline I've worked at has advertised that, oh yeah, we have trip trade system, and you guys be happy. You can build your own schedules, and stuff can change. It's like, it never works. The rules are so, and it's not that the rules are so restrictive, but there's not enough slack in the system that yeah, like most people are being worked off into their max days to begin with. Anyways, so yeah, it's been very unfortunate, but that's what kind of makes this neat. So when you get this schedule set up here in a pilot's life, you have to fly it, and there is a way out of it. You can do a skip flight. You can skip 5 flights out of every month for free, which is like a crazy number. Like, to me, you should be able to skip like 1 or maybe 2. So you can take a day off. You can skip these flights if you need to for whatever reason. If you can't do it, the scenery's bad, or the flight's just too long. It's a 7-hour voyage from, you know, or a 12-hour voyage from New York to Delhi or something like that. It's like, that's just too far. I'm never going to do that flight. You can skip some of them, so I like that. But just the fact that it's fixed, you know, I know what I have to do next. The next time I come to work, I got to do this, and it's really neat like that. I really love this software. I think it's so well done. And then there is the job progression, which kind of makes it neat. You got to fly for your specific airline. There is some grading. The better you fly, the better the jobs you'll get, the better the pay you'll get down the road. I like that. I think that's neat as well. And the type ratings, you know, you got to earn money. The money does something for you. You got to buy type ratings. You got to make sure you have the type ratings for the aircraft you want to fly. Normally the airlines would handle that, but so that is not necessarily realistic, but it's a neat little kind of twist that kind of you have to think about what you're doing, and your pay is important to you. It does something for you. You want to fly certain airplane types, you got to earn the pay for that type rating. So, you know, well, in the real world, we got to spend that money on food and housing, but it gives us something to spend that money on anyways. Anywho, yeah, I think JetBlue's going to be an interesting place. They've got a big schedule too when you start to look at it. I think I showed this last time, but job market, and we can look at JetBlue's. Let's find JetBlue the easy way here. But if we look at JetBlue's information, like, they've got a pretty extensive network, especially across the eastern U.S. Not that many pilots that you work here on the Pilot's Life. 62 out of 239 positions. That's not that many. I think they really need to kind of shrink the number of positions down a little bit, because there's no competition here. The pilot shortage is real. It exists in North America, and this does not reflect a pilot shortage. Or maybe it does. I guess maybe it does. There's lots of positions and no pilots applying. I guess it does kind of, but anyways. Just thinking about it. But it's a pretty expensive network. I'm not going to do the European flights or anything like that. It's just too far. But like up and down the eastern seaboard, there's just a huge variety of flights. And the nice thing is, it's not just all out and back. There is a lot of out and back. There's huge hubs at JFK, LaGuardia, Newark, and Boston here. But there's also like some kind of, you know, minor satellite hubs down in Florida. So there's definitely some capability to kind of do some outback stuff that's a little bit different. There's also some transcon stuff. I'm just not interested in the transcon stuff. It's just too far. It's just too far. I can't justify spending that much time simming sometimes. Not on stream. It's just too much. I've done enough of this transcon stuff, and it's like you're sitting there for 5-6 hours trying to find stuff to talk about, and my voice runs out at about hour 3 anyway. So then you guys are just sitting there staring at the airplane flying without even the benefit of my commentary. Not that I think you guys want to listen to it, but there's just a lot of variety up here. There's lots of great airports. I definitely think we can get another season out of this with a totally different variety of airports. I wouldn't mind visiting even maybe some of these South American airports. Definitely a few Caribbean airports. I'm disappointed that there's only San Juan was the only Caribbean airport we got. So I'm hoping we can get some more Caribbean airports as we go here. But definitely it's going to be an interesting season. All right, how are we doing now? So we passed over Let's see here. I think that's Myrtle Beach over there, MYR. So yeah, so Myrtle Beach. So we're coming up through the Carolinas. We're getting there. It's not a hugely long flight. If you find something good to talk about with the person you're with, a flight like this will just go flying by. Just keep glancing over here to make sure no ATC's popping online. Otherwise, just trying to think about what else we can talk about here. Yeah, actually had an interesting one happen at work just the other day. Something that I have not seen in, I can't remember how long. I may never have seen this in my professional career. But the other day we actually defueled the airplane, which is something that, like, I just, like, to me that's just crazy. And I understand why we did it, and I understand why we had to do it, but, like, the amount of money wasted, because once you put a fuel into an airplane, it has to stay there. If you take fuel out of an airplane, so if you fuel this airplane and you put too much fuel in it and you have to actually take fuel out of it, that fuel, it's not like we throw it in the garbage, but that fuel can never be put in another airplane again. I used to work the ramp years ago, and yeah, every day we had to check the fuel to make sure that it was the quality was okay, it was clear, the filters were working, everything's good, there's no water accumulating in it, remove any water that does accumulate in the system, and water will accumulate in the system eventually. It's just a fact of life. There will be a little bit of water will accumulate in the system because there's usually empty air at the top of every storage container, fuel tank in the airplanes, in the fuel trucks, in the ground, at the fuel farm. There's usually a little empty air, and it's usually vented to the atmosphere. So, you know, moist air will get in there, and when it gets cold, it will condense and drip into the water. So there will be water in fuel at some point in the system. The systems are not 100% sealed closed. But we do check them every day, and we drain out any water that we do find to make sure that there shouldn't be water perpetually staying in the system, accumulating in the system in a vast quantity. But any fuel that we took out of the system to test, and we literally put it in a glass jar and have a look at it and make sure that it was clear and the correct color and looked clean and everything. Once we took it out of the system into that jar, we couldn't put it back in the system. So once we took it out of the jar, we could actually kind of eke it back into the system a little bit. There was a little bit of a recycling system, but once it goes into an airplane and it comes back out again, you can never put it in another airplane. So that fuel, it's not necessarily wasted, but you've got to find something else to do with it. But the airline has spent the money on that fuel, and if they defuel it, they won't get the money back. They won't get their money refunded. They'll usually find some way to burn it. Again, when we used to work the ramp, what we used to do with the dirty fuel was we just throw it in the diesel vehicles. Jet fuel burns pretty much like diesel, and so we'd throw it in the diesel vehicles. The diesel mixed in with the diesel, and the diesel vehicles would just burn it off. But that was it. Like, we couldn't. Once you take that fuel out of an airplane, you can't put it back in. And the amount of fuel we took out of the airplane yesterday was 5 tons. 5 tons. It was not an inconsequential amount of fuel. It was 5 tons. It was a lot of fuel. And I can't even remember the last time I'd ever seen that. But we were going to be 5 tons overweight for landing. The airplane had originally been scheduled to do a long flight. It got removed from that flight. Maintenance had to be done to it. And then we got the airplane. And it was still fuel for that long flight. And we had a relatively short flight that was going to put us 5 tons overweight for landing. So we had to find a way to get rid of that 5 tons. There was no other airplane available for us to use. Most of the time, if this is the case, and an airplane's going to be overweight for landing, the airline will switch. They'll switch the airplane to something that needs that fuel and can use the fuel and will burn the fuel rather than defuel it. Honestly, I cannot remember the last time I defueled an airplane. It has literally been 20 years, and I don't think I've ever seen an airplane defueled outside of a maintenance situation. The only time that I've ever really seen airplanes defuel is in maintenance. If they need to do something to the fuel tank, change a fuel pump, or change the fuel tank liner, or fuel filter, or something like that, and they need to actually get into the fuel tank, then they may have to drain the fuel out of the tank for that reason. And usually those kind of things are known in advance. Usually maintenance will say, we have to do, XXX to this to the fuel system. Try to bring the airplane back with as little fuel as possible. And I mean, they may even, depending on the airplane, they may be able to transfer fuel from one tank to another to drain the tank down pretty close to the bottom and then just drain out the last little bit of unusable fuel. But from an operational perspective, I cannot think of any time I've ever actually had to refuel an airplane. We actually had to do it. It was just crazy to me, and that's money down the drain, unfortunately. It is what it is. It had to be done because it was the only airplane that was available to us. The alternative was just not going. It was canceling the flight. So yeah, somebody worked it out and said, well, this is not ideal. It really is less than ideal. It's going to cost us a lot of money, but if the alternative is canceling the flight, then this is what we have to do. So, but yeah, I can't think of the last time I saw that happen, to be honest. Okay, let's do another little position update here as we pass Yerk. Alright, so let's pull this up again here. Yerk, so the time is now 15:49 with 8.8? Yes. So Yerk, 15:49, 8.8. Let's see how this is looking here. Yerk. 15:49 and 8.8. I subtract 2.2 from that, you end up with 6.6. So we got a little bit more fuel than we're supposed to have. We're actually seem to be making fuel here as we go downstream. We are falling a little bit behind on the schedule, though, about 1 minute behind here. So I may take action. And you can do things about that. The biggest thing that we're really trying to do with these checks is just make sure that we're not there's not a substantial deviation from the flight plan. Small deviations from the flight plan are not uncommon. This flight plan was made kind of based on an idealized wind forecast, and generally these forecasts are really quite accurate nowadays. And let's just see here how the sim is looking here as we pass here. 302 at 20, and it was forecast to be 274 at 22. So the speed is very close. The direction's off by about 30 degrees. It's very close. It's within reason. It's a little more of a headwind than we'd originally planned on. But yeah, the purpose of these checks is kind of twofold. One is to make sure that the plan is kind of working out, that we are not taking substantially longer, that maybe it's a tiny bit. We got a little variation here, but nothing substantial, and we are actually ahead on the fuel of where we should be. So we should definitely get there with the fuel we needed. So normally I wouldn't do this, but because we're streaming, and it's not a long stream, but it's a long enough stream, I might have just a look here at bumping up the cost index a little bit, because we were only planning cost index 10. And at this point, it's not going to make a huge difference. So let's see here. 1719, 5.7 in the tanks. The best way to do this, actually, is make sure that the secondary is accurate. And then we go secondary perf, and let's bump up the secondary perf to 50. And I think in this, I think that just did it, didn't it? Yeah. I think in the Fenix, that shouldn't happen. In the Fenix, the secondary page is independent. It should only change the secondary flight plan. In this case, it actually changed the real flight plan, which is not correct. So there's a glitch in the system there. I may have to file a bug report. But what you could do then is you could pull up the main flight plan over here, pull up the secondary flight plan over here, and then compare the two. Oops. Secondary flight plan over here, and then compare the two. So you say, hey, the main flight plan says we're getting there at 1717. This one says we're getting there at 1719 or 1714. If we do the change in the secondary, so you can compare the fuel, the time between the secondary and the main flight plan, and say, hey, this is going to save us some time. So it did save us 2 minutes. We're going a little bit faster. We're going to burn a little bit more gas, but still plenty above the minimum. If you were interested, you could check the weather out in Boston too. And that's the other thing too, is that the weather in Boston is not terrible, but it's not great this morning. There is a lower ceiling hanging out. Let's see what it's like right now. So the latest information, Yankee, 5 miles, light rain, mist, scattered at 700, overcast at 1800. So it's not bad, actually. Scattered 700, overcast 1800. It's almost VFR, really. There was a chance of a lower ceiling. That scattered 700 is probably, on and off, scattered, broken all day. But that's why we're carrying the extra fuel, is to give us a chance. The other thing we should also check while we're en route, because there was also a forecast of some lower ceiling at our alternate. Let's just verify the alternate is also still holding here. So, yeah, JFK is wide open. 10 miles, scattered at 1400, scattered at 2700. So you just want to check these things as you go here. Right now, it's VMC where we are. So, I mean, if things were really kind of, going to hell, we're at our destination and our alternate, we definitely have lots of places that we can consider diverting at this point. We are, let's see here, we're over in North Carolina, I believe. So we've got like Raleigh, Durham off to our left side there somewhere. Charlotte as well is off to the west somewhere there. There's RDU. I think Charlotte's a little further away. As we truck further north, we will pass over. We'll pass pretty much almost directly over Washington. Washington, Baltimore, Philadelphia, like lots of airports we could consider diverting to along the way. So you definitely always want to just sort of have that in the back of your mind as well. It's just, what are my diversion points en route? You know, what places can I stop and potentially you know, potentially drop in if things are really getting bad at our destination or our alternates. So you always want to kind of have those, and also just if anything untoward happens en route, you want to just have plans in mind. You don't want to wait until something happens and then be like, oh, what airports are we around right now? You always want to have a little bit of a mental picture of what are my possible alternates, especially what are the company stations, where would the company like me to go if push comes to shove. You know, and again, at the end of the day,
traffic.
I've literally got someone head-to-head here. This guy is at 35,000 feet. There's the TCAS Blue, and here comes the TCAS RA. All right, TCAS RA. Who's flying westbound at 35,000 feet, though? And I see him on VATSIM. He's flying westbound 35,000. But see this? It went to TCAS mode, and it's got the vertical speeds in the green band. My hand's on the controls. I'm just monitoring it. I'm just going to let it do its thing here until the TCAS RA is gone away. I'm watching the speed. Speed is deteriorating a little bit as we're trying to maintain this vertical speed to get us past this traffic here. And now there goes the contrail of that traffic, so he's going to be biased in a second here. But look, the TCAS system works in the Fenix. And there we go. And it automatically resets it to get back to our altitude. So it's still 35,000 feet as the selected altitude. The only thing it did was switch us out of nav and into heading mode, but it's now got a vertical speed minus 1,000, so it's going to get us back down to our altitude. I literally don't have to do anything. I'm sitting here watching it to make sure it does what it's supposed to. The other thing I should have done at that point, of course we don't have any ATC online, but JetBlue 1282 TCAS climb standby. And then JetBlue 1282 clear of conflict, returning to flight level 350. And there I put nav back on there, so now we're back on course again. But there we go. Wow, how fantastic is that? A TCAS demonstration. I didn't even do anything to cause that. Literally, someone is going from New York down to Miami. They're flying the wrong way. Not flying the wrong way. They're flying the wrong altitude. They're flying at 30. They're flying at flight level 350 on a westbound flight, and they should be an even altitude for a westbound flight. There's mock alt cruise. Captain Michael G'day. You got there just to watch the end of a TCAS RA, and that's very new. That is a very new update to the Airbus software. The last couple of years, they've just put that out there. So, you know, and look at that. Like, for me, the workload was almost inconsequential. I almost didn't even. I really didn't need to do anything. The only thing I actually physically needed to do, besides monitor what the airplane was doing, was I needed to put it back from heading into nav mode. So. The other thing that the TCAS, and that makes sense when you think about it. Like it took us from nav mode, and as soon as the TCAS system activated, it put us into heading mode. And the idea, of course, is that you don't want to be turning while you're doing a TCAS maneuver necessarily. If you were reaching a waypoint and you suddenly had to make a turn on your flight plan, it doesn't want you to turn, because especially if you're trying to do a climbing resolution. Yes. So yeah, if you're doing a climbing resolution, they wouldn't want you to turn as well, because that could decrease your climb performance, and it's more important that we maintain the climb performance. We're really trying to go for vertical separation, not lateral separation. So engaging heading mode in the present heading makes perfect sense, and then we just had to rearm that mode. Captain Michael said yes, asked whatever center we're on. Yes, he asked about the phraseology. Yes, so if that was to happen in the real world, yes, you would just say TCAS RA, and every air traffic controller at when clear JetBlue 1282. Clear of conflict. Exactly. Every controller in the world knows that. Well, yeah, every controller in the world, I think, should know anyways. But they're all trained to understand that TCAS RAs take precedence over any ATC instruction, and that all pilots have been instructed, if there's a TCAS RA and an ATC instruction, you follow the TCAS RA and disregard the ATC instruction. And as soon as you tell ATC that you have a TCAS RA, it also abdicates them of any direct responsibility. So you are taking this unilateral action because the system on board the aircraft tells you that this is the safest course of action. It may cause other issues and conflicts, and the ATC will try to vector any other aircraft perhaps near you away from you, but they will not try to give you an alternative instruction. yeah, so yeah, and then as soon as you say you're clear of conflict, normally you try to get back to what your original clearance was. ATC knows that then, okay, now you're free to follow any ATC clearances, so they may give you a different clearance. They may clear you to a different altitude. If you actually climb substantially, they may ask you to do something else. So that was really neat, though. And I have had that once or twice in the Fenix. I have had TCAS RAs in the Fenix, and I've just sat there and I've just watched it. It's great. Just make sure it does do what it's supposed to do. It is a little bit slow to get there, and we are 35,000 feet, so the airplane can't do anything quickly. You can't pull on the airplane. The air is pretty thin up here. There's not a whole lot of performance margin. You know, it can't be yanking the airplane up, but it within about 10 seconds, it had gotten the vertical speed into the green arc, which is all you need to see, and then just held it there. And I just love the fact that, like, it goes back. After the TCAS RA, it doesn't give up. It's just like, okay, the TCAS RA is complete. I'm going to go back to doing what I was doing before. So it just sets up a vertical speed, 1,000 feet per minute towards the altitude you were at before, and down you go again, or up you go again. And the only thing you had to do was re-engage in aft mode. It's very well thought out, a very well thought out system, and I'm continually impressed with some of the logic behind Airbus design decisions. Sometimes I look at some of the things and I'm like, I might not have designed it that way. I might have done something different. But there's a lot of stuff where I say, yeah, that's a smart decision. That's a smart way to handle things. The more time you spend in this airplane, the more you get to appreciate the smart design decisions that have been made over the years on this airplane. Here we go. Got rid of kind of that light. The light was really kind of horrible reflection, of course. Kind of, it's a lot nicer now. Captain Michael is preparing a flight from Gatwick to LEIB. I'm trying to think. I don't know LEIB. What is LEIB? Ibiza. Okay. Yeah. Espanol, Ibiza. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. LEIB. I was like, and I was thinking, yeah, Spain, right? Because LEBL is Barcelona, LEMD is Madrid. So yeah, I should have gotten that. I should have figured that one out. I'm just slipping here. Just being lazy a little bit too. Just gonna take myself away here. Just gotta come up with some nice, title shots eventually here. Show what the airplane looks like. Got the Airbus. So. It is a good looking airplane. They've done a nice job with it, and there are some nice liveries out there. The only thing I'm a little bit disappointed is that there are not more JetBlue liveries out there. There are a bunch more, but there's almost all exclusively 8K, and I just can't justify 8K. My screen is fine. It's a 4K monitor, but it's just the performance. You put 8K texture on there instead of 4K texture, you're dealing with 4 times more texture information. Quadrupling the amount of information. That's a lot more information for your video card to process. I just cannot justify 8Ks. How the Queen will fit on the runway, I don't know. Yeah. Yeah, these might be a little bit tight. You may want to make sure you don't have too much extra fuel when you get there. There are actually, and if you go look on flightsim.to, there is actually a good variety. There are 3 4K textures that I've downloaded, so I'm going to rotate through the 3 different JetBlue textures as I do this season. There goes 30 minutes. I'm just going to do a quick fuel check here just to make sure everything is hunky-dory. So we have burned 3,600 kilos plus 83. That adds up to 9, 10, 11, 11, 9, almost 12. Yep, that's what we started with. Everything's balanced. Fuel temperatures are okay. Yeah, and actually I will say this, and I tend to stay away from like the really special liveries, but yeah, there's a number of I'm just going to pull up on my other computer because the one thing I found about flightsim.to is it's a real resource hog. It makes Firefox work extremely hard. So yeah. Let's see here. So flightsim.to, let's search for JetBlue Fenix. Yeah, there were a few of the special ones. I think there's a few of the sports team ones. Yeah, so I got those ones. But there's a bunch more that this guy who did a lot of them, and he does a really nice job. I don't want to diss him, but he only released a bunch of them in 8K. He didn't release a bunch of them he only released a limited number in 4K, and I'm a little bit disappointed about that, just because again it looks really nice in 8K, but just can't I just can't run it. And ditto. So let's see here. He's got the same guy did the Boston Bruins JetBlue plane, which is kind of fun. Somebody did the retro JetBlue livery. The I Love New York one, but again 8K, 8K, 8K. So many of these guys did 8K, and it's just like I appreciate it, but it's too much. The Celtics one, the Bravest one, the Red Sox plane. So there are a bunch of them. The New York Jets plane, but a lot of them are 8K, and I can't do 8K. It just yeah, I'll have to look through, because it looks like there's a few more than what I found on the original list. Some of these also are for some of the other Airbuses, the Latin VFR, the A3NX. I'll have to look through again and see what there is. And maybe I could do one of the sports teams one or something. But yeah, I stay away from the 8K. And it's not that I don't like 8K. How ironic, it's 89 degrees and I have a cold. I had a cold like a month ago, actually. I had to actually call in sick from work because I had a cold a month ago. So, especially the kids going back to school now, everyone's going to get a cold regardless of whether it's warm or not. Let's see here. I mean, probably I could convert 8K to 4K. I mean, at the end of the day, it's resampling. That's a question of effort, I think, I guess, more than anything. Yeah, I don't see anything particular. I'm sure. I'm not sure, but I would think someone probably over time has probably created that utility to convert from 8K to 4K. But yeah, I can. For me, it's also just a matter of time. Like, you know, downloading a handful of liveries and installing them, not a big deal. Take 5-10 minutes to do it. But forgot myself back up here. But you know, running them through the software, if it doesn't work perfectly the first time, I'm not going to spend a whole lot of time, you know, messing with it. So I stick to 4K, and it's just because I don't have a great graphics card. I'm hoping to upgrade it. I was hoping to upgrade it this year, and I keep on spending money on other things. Don't need full tanks of fuel to wing it. Well, don't wing it. Just look what you actually need and make a realistic plan. I had a great. I saw a great moment the other day doing a command sim seat support, and the candidate called up the, you know, got handed the flight plan for the sim session and looked at it, called up the dispatcher and says, hey, can I have you know, another 600 kilos of weather fuel? And there was a little bit of back and forth with the sim instructor, and some dispatchers might push back, most probably won't if it's not going to cause any other issues down the line. But I think it was kind of funny. The sim instructor was playing the game. He's like, because the simulation's kind of like, the scripts are kind of fixed. They kind of depend on you sort of having certain things, certain amount of fuel and everything like that. And at the end of the day, you know, the candidate said, well, you know, I'm a new captain. I'd like a little bit more fuel, just in case. And the instructor came back and said, well, you know, if you feel like you need more fuel than what the flight plan has here, maybe you're not ready to be captain. Which I thought that was an interesting response, and you know, and again, he's playing the game. I do like the sim instructor. I've worked with him a bunch of times now, and I like him. He's very fair. He really wants people to succeed and do their best. But you know, they spend a little bit of time like going through the fuel policy, like, how much fuel do you have? How much extra fuel do you have above and beyond the minimum you need? And what is that fuel for? And what are you potentially going to use it for? Because basically extra fuel most of the time, 90% of the time, extra fuel is just hold fuel. It's just how long you get a hold before you divert to an alternate is mostly what the extra fuel usually means. It kind of covers maybe a couple of contingencies here and there. Maybe you think there's a real contingency you might need. Yeah, maybe there's a reason for it. But there's already fuel on the flight plan. You know, my flight plan is probably pretty generous here. So here's my flight plan, what I did here. I did... let's see here. This is not the flight plan. That was the wrong flight plan. let me show you what I did here for real. It was this one here. Yeah, so, you know, what fuel do you need? Well, we need 6,400 kilos to get from Orlando to Boston. We also need 230 kilos for the taxi out of Orlando. We need that. Got to have that. We also legally required to have this 5% contingency. And then we also legally need this fuel to get to our alternate, another 1,900 kilos, and then we need 1,200 kilos, 1,100 kilos beyond that for 30 minutes of additional reserve. So we fly, taxi out in Orlando, fly all the way to our destination, go to our alternate, still have 1,100 kilos, plus we've also got 5% contingency here, an extra 7 minutes worth of fuel, plus the dispatcher also gave us some extra fuel here. He also gave us ATC fuel for departure and arrival delays, weather fuel for arrival weather into Boston. So 20 minutes of additional fuel of ATC and 20 minutes of weather fuel. So 40 minutes of additional fuel here. There's a lot of extra fuel here, actually, by most airline standards. The weather is not looking great in Boston. It's actually picking up, and it's looking pretty good right now. Probably could have gotten away with a little bit less. I was a little bit generous with myself there. But, yeah, do you need any more fuel beyond this? Like, what are you really going to do? If I give you another 20 minutes of fuel, what are you really going to do with it? You're just going to hold another 20 minutes longer. Like, if you don't get in 40 minutes in Boston, you know, and you're getting down to that last fuel going to JFK, like, just turn and burn and go to JFK. Just from the airline perspective, especially, they're I won't say they're adamant, but most airlines are really kind of, airlines are big into data. They collect so much data, huge volumes of data. They know how much fuel every flight from Orlando to Boston has used for the last, like, you know, 5 or 10 years probably. They know how much, and on an average Tuesday morning, the flight from Boston to Toronto will use this, or the flight from Orlando to Boston will use this much, and will, you know, and 98% of the time will land with this amount of fuel. And you know, they can, you know, maybe use like 2 minutes of contingency fuel on most of those flights. Occasionally you might use a little bit more. Very rarely you might use a little bit more. So statistics driven. The cost of carrying around an extra 40 minutes of fuel all the time, it starts to really add up over the course of the year. So a lot of airlines are starting to get kind of stingy on the fuel. Not to the point where it's unsafe. You still got these legal minimums. You've got lots of things. You're just not holding forever. You're just not carrying around this fuel to hold to go to your alternate anyways. You don't get in. You don't get to your destination. You can't get in. 2 minutes traffic backed up. Whatever. You go to your alternate. The airlines are starting to come to that realization that it's just not worth carrying the extra fuel. There's so few diversions in the real world that it's just not worth carrying that extra fuel. Carry the minimum amount you need. Give some extras for the contingencies that might pop up. You know, okay, Newark, you're always delayed. Boston's a pretty, you know, congested airport a lot of the time. We'll give you some fuel for that, but we're not going to give you 40 minutes of extra fuel for the delays into Boston. No, we almost never use that much. And they've actually given us apps now as pilots where we can actually see what the normal fuel burn is to these routes, what the normal extra percentage of fuel we use on most of these flights. And sometimes you'll have an unusual flight. You'll have some really bad weather. And like, okay, yeah, you really want to pack it on for that flight, pack it on for the bad weather. But I'm a new captain, and, you know, this is my first month out, and I'm still not comfortable with going minimum fuel. It's like, maybe he's right. Maybe you're not ready to be captain if you're not ready to go with you know, the legal requirement. It's not like we're not meeting the legal requirement. It's not like we're asking you to take less than legally required fuel. Definitely the legally required fuel plus a little bit more. We're just not giving you just gobs and gobs of extra gas to carry around with you for the next month or so, and think of how much extra fuel you burn just to carry that fuel around and have it with you. If you need it, if you got a justification with it, no dispatcher is going to argue with you. Something you see that they don't see, no dispatcher is going to argue with you. And at the end of the day, most airlines have a dispute resolution policy as well, because most airlines are co-dispatch. The captain and the dispatcher have to come to an agreement on the flight plan. Usually the dispatcher makes the flight plan, the captain reads it and agrees with it. But if the captain disagrees with something, then they go and they have a discussion with the dispatcher and they try to reach an agreement. And, you know, 99 times out of 100, probably more often than that, the phone call between the dispatcher and the captain will eventually result in an agreement. One or the other, they'll change their minds or they'll meet somewhere in the middle, but they'll come to an agreement, and you know, and everything, you know, everything will be fine. They'll regenerate the flight plan based on the new agreed upon plan. Once in a very rare while, neither person can convince the other person that their point of view is valid. And then at the end of the day, most airlines will have then a dispute resolution policy, which says that if you can't come to that agreement, then at the end of the day, the most conservative course of action will prevail. and then you'll file a bunch of reports, and the managers will look at it and say, well, why was there this disagreement? You know, is somebody being unreasonable? Somebody needs some extra training or some extra, you know, just a chat like, hey, why did you feel this? Why did you disagree? You know, and it's not to find fault or blame, but just to say, are there inadequacies in the system that we need to address that you know, we haven't perceived perhaps. Why did you guys not agree on this, and how can we help prevent future disagreements? But at the end of the day, on the day of, the most conservative course of action. So if the captain says, I want an extra 1,000 kilos, and the dispatcher says, I don't see any weather there, I don't think you need it. At the end of the day, if they don't agree and then neither of them can change their minds, then you'll get the extra 1,000, because that's the most conservative course of action, is to carry the extra fuel. It costs the company a little bit more, but you do the most conservative course of action if there can't be an agreement reached. But I would say that probably happens one time out of 1,000, probably between pilot and dispatcher interactions, if even that often. It almost never happens. Dispatchers are generally very good at their job. The only trouble is that they often, and not often, but sometimes they will have a lot on their plate. They may have a case where, you know, first of all, they're monitoring multiple flights and dealing with multiple flights at any given point in time. And then they may have something untoward happen on one of those flights that then causes a big distraction and increases their workload, focuses their attention on one particular thing. So, you know, you could have somebody having a serious medical incident, or an aircraft that, you know, that's maybe going to have to turn around or divert somewhere, you know, maybe because of a medical incident or you know, some kind of a malfunction, anything like that. And, you know, and all of a sudden, the dispatcher, who was kind of, you know, calmly filing more flight plans and watching the weather and everything, all of a sudden has to really focus on this one particular flight. They've got to analyze the landing at this diversion airport. They've got to notify services. They've got to pass information about NOTAMs and weather to the crew. All of a sudden, you know, then they've got to coordinate maybe with crew scheduling and maintenance and everything, and all of a sudden their workload has just gone through the roof for this one flight. Never mind the other flights they still have to deal with. They still have other flights that are on their plate that they've got to, you know, generate flight plans for the next couple of flights that are coming up and things like that. So sometimes when something like that happens, certainly at a larger airline, there'll be a chief dispatcher, and the chief dispatcher may come in and either take over the flight that's having an issue, or take over all the normal duties so that the dispatcher can focus. But sometimes, yeah, anyways, my point was that sometimes dispatchers can lose focus. They're human beings. They have a limited attention capacity, and if something major comes up that really steals away a lot of their attention, they may miss something else. They may miss the TAF was amended at their one airport and how it impacted some of the flights that are en route to that airport. You know, so it is possible that they will make mistakes, and any time that I've ever called and said, hey, I'm just looking at this and I'm just not sure that this is enough extra fuel. Like I've been to Newark 100 times. I know that we're going to get delayed for we're going to hold for 30 to 45 minutes. You've only given us like 10 extra minutes of fuel. And it's like, oh yeah, you know what? I'm sorry. I'm busy. I wasn't thinking. You're right. We'll do 40 minutes or 30 minutes. And usually like it's just a question of having that discussion, saying, I see something that maybe you don't see. Well, only once in a very rare while have I ever had that discussion where I disagreed with the dispatcher and I actually had to just pull out the dispute resolution policy and said, we're not going to come to an agreement. You're going to have to do this. And you file a report. I file a report. At the end of the day, that's what happened. But it's been extremely rare. I can't think of any cases off the top of my head. I think I have done it a couple times, but I can't even think of the case off the top of my head. It's been so extremely rare. Anyways. How are we doing here? We are getting there. What time is it now? So it's 16:16. We are about an hour from landing, I think, right? 17:16. We are exactly 1 hour from landing. So what I'm going to do is this. We're going to go 16:46, which would be 30 minutes to landing. Set ourselves a reminder at that point. And if we zoom out far enough, it should be in there somewhere. That's it right there, 16:46. So we will get a reminder as we get up there, but we are getting up there pretty quickly. So it's time to already think about starting to set up for our arrival. And that didn't take very long today, which is kind of how I like it. I don't want this to be like a forever stream. I like streaming. I enjoy doing it, but I don't want the flights to be 4 or 5 hour slogs. 2-3 hours is a very nice, comfortable middle ground where you definitely have time to chat about stuff, but it's not the end of the world. But it's not dragging on forever, and my voice is not dying. My voice has about a 3 hour limit on a live stream. All right. So Boston Information Zulu, this was 21 minutes ago, 1554. Winds 150 at 5, so the winds are swinging around a little bit here. 10 miles, scattered 600, broken to 1900, broken to 2800, 22 degrees, 30 inches. Rain began at 14 after, ended at 31 after, so the runway's probably wet. ILS 4 right, departing 9, 33 right is approved for turnoff, read back all the short instructions assigned altitudes, hazardous weather info for New England area on FSS frequencies, numerous cranes in Boston area and vicinity of Logan Airport, runway 15 right, 33 left, closed. Advise you have info Zulu. Well, that's interesting. Okay, so 15 right, that's why they haven't switched runways, because they don't have 15 right available right now. All right, so let's just start off with some landing distance calculations. So let's just pull this up here, and then I'm just going to pause that there so I can lean back and do this normally here. So we're going to call it a Boston, runway 4 right. There it is. We're going to call it a wet runway, so good braking. There we go, 5. Apply METAR. And it's got the METAR right there. I love that this stuff all kind of loads itself automatically. Aircraft config. Landing weight. That's the one thing I should look at here. So the easiest thing is do fuel prediction page. 58.3 plus, call it, just round it to 6. That'll be 64.3. So let's just do 64.3. That's a very reasonable. It gives us a little bit of margin. 6 got in there. 6. 4.3. Let's see. Low auto brake, no reverse, manual landing with full flaps and auto thrust on. And no landing distance procedures. And it gives us in meters. Can I not change this from meters? I thought everything was in feet on this airplane. What am I looking for here? Oh, no, in here. So settings in here. Some settings. Units. Distance in feet. I'd rather do it in feet. I'm just North American. That's just how I deal. All right. That should, I think, change this up. There we go. 69.39 feet. So landing distance available 88.52 with the low auto brake. We're predicted to use 69.39. With a 15% landing distance factor, still 79.79. So not a whole lot of extra, but it works. What are my other options? Medium, max manual. I like low auto brake. On a wet runway, it might just be a little bit too little. It works, but the trouble is, like, you're not leaving yourself a lot of room for a float down this runway. That's the only thing. Factor distance 79, and it's 8,800 foot runway, so it only leaves you 1,000 foot margin from the touchdown zone. Yeah, okay. We'll do low auto brake, and we'll plan a transition to manual brake as well to help make sure we land within the given runway. So, auto brake low for this arrival. And let's just start setting her all up here. Alright, so what we're going to do is we're going to do a quick little plan view here. We're going to throw this up here. We're going to make sure constraints are on, and we're going to just review this as we go. So, close my Navigraph at some point, I guess. Reopen that. And just a quick question, any ATC yet? Nope, nobody. Alright, well, we tried. Alright, let's see here, Boston. Alright, so, Roebuck 3 arrival, and let's just select the ILS to 4 right here. I don't think we're going to need a Cat 2 at all. So we're going to go ILS 4 right, and to route. Alright, that should be available there, yeah. Should be available right along the bottom here as well. Alright, so, first of all, we're going to look at the, not that one, that's the wrong one, this one. Hide this now. Alright, so we're going to look at the Roebuck 3 RNAV arrival for the 4s. Alright, and it starts at, we join it at Rwy. So let's just see if we got this in here. After CCC, there's Ruse. Watch it there. So Ruse, and Ruse is between 23 and 21. It is all in above 17,000. Banky above 16,000. Roebuck at 260 knots between 190 and 12,000. Pro-V above 11,000. Judy, make a left turn to hit Sophie, 220 knots, 10,000 to 9,000. Ernai, 8,000 to 7,000, or Ernie maybe. And then Goshi, 6,000 at 210 knots. And then that should be where we transition to straight in ILS runway 4 right. Yeah, and let's just check here. So Goshi 6, Winnie 4, Navo 3. Goshi 6, Winnie 4, Navo 3, Milt 1700, 4 right. Let's also check the missed approach here. Straight ahead to 420. So climb to 3,000 feet, Boston 030 radial outbound to Waxen. So at 400 feet, we join course 030 outbound to Waxen. Hold at 3,000. Perfect. Flight plan page looks good. RadNav has not come up yet, but we should expect to see IBOS 110.3 and 035. We can change this here now to be, actually I'll just put BOS for the Boston VOR, which is on the field. It'll give me a good bearing distance. 48 degrees, 339 miles to go. Perf page. And, alright, so, descent, cruise phase, yeah, so descent phase, 79328, that's a reasonable speed. I wouldn't want to go much faster than that in descent, but that's reasonable. And let's just go back to my ATIS here. So the QNH in Boston is 30.00. Temperature 22. And the wind there is showing 150 at 5. 150 at 5. Alright, barrel mins on this one, 218. 218. We are doing config full. And missed approach altitude is 3,000, so we will accelerate. Accelerate at 3,000, and if the engine fails, we'll do the same thing and accelerate at 3,000 to go around. Alright, go around, so that's good. So performance is all set. Fuel prediction, we got 2.9. We got an hour and 27 extra minutes of fuel. We got tons of time to hold when we get to JF, or when we get to Boston. If, yeah, we got a lot of time to hold. If the weather goes south for some reason, then we can need to set up for the Cat 2 or something. I don't think it's going to. I think the trend is generally up, but just in case. Alright, now that I put in all the arrival data, I'm just going to bump this up here. Yeah. What I could do is go into secondary performance, and in theory, I should be able to put in a Cat 2. We can actually do Cat 3 ILS. And put in just no DH as a Cat 3 ILS if we absolutely had to do an auto land. However, I'm curious to see. Oh, good. Good, good, good. It did not change. Interesting. Change the cost index and changed it, but notice I'm in the normal performance page. Go to approach, it's kept it at barrel 218, but if I go to the secondary, and its performance should be completely independent from the main performance, it did keep no radio barrel min. So for Cat 3, no auto land, just 100-foot alert height. Otherwise, I believe the Cat 2 is pretty much all the same. It's just a question of different minimums. Special aircrew authorization required and all that good stuff, of course. So that's kind of set us up already for Cat 2 very easily. The other things you can put in the secondary is potential runway change if you think you're going to need a runway change. There's a second approach that's very commonly used. I don't see anything coming right now. I mean, the winds are kind of favoring 1.5, but unless 15 right opens, I don't see any need for that. So the other thing we're going to do right now, I'm just going to go back to ARC mode just to kind of keep an eye on our flight plan here, our progress as we go here. But the other thing I'm going to just check on here, you can start to see we're starting to build some clouds. We're headed up across New Jersey here. I believe that's the Jersey shore right there. Or is this Delaware? No, I think it's Delaware, isn't it? Let's have a quick look here. Yeah, there's Philly up there. So no, this is not the Jersey Shore. This is Delaware. Okay. NOTAMs, that was the other thing I was going to check. Before I get into this full briefing mode here, let's just check the NOTAMs and see what we need to do here. Alright, so, raw, NOTAM v. Boston, because it looked like there were a lot of NOTAMs from Boston as well. It's Kennedy. Alright, here comes Boston, and yeah, they look like a lot of NOTAMs here. So let's start having a look at stuff here. So first of all, we'll have a look at the airport diagram because we're going to need taxi. Some work in progress in various taxiways. Kilo Echo Alpha Bravo Mike. Some unserviceable signs, direction signs, satellite markings. Airport closed to non-skid transient GA aircraft except prior permission required. Okay, it's not us anyways. Blue position signs, painted markings, signs, center line, markings obscured, touchdown zone signs, markings obscured. Lots of stuff obscured. Charlie, between approach end of 33 left and 0927, closed. Foxtrot, between 15 right and 4 right, closed, okay. Golf closed. Quebec closed between 15 right and Mike. Quebec closed between 15 right and Mike. Charlie 1 closed. Charlie 1. Those are not affecting us because it's a different airport. Just got lumped in this NOTAM file. FICON's 555. We're set up for a 555 arrival on 4 right. 1432 closed except taxi. 15 left closed except taxi. 15 right closed. They're doing some serious work there. Approach procedures. ILS 4 right, circling a 9, not applicable at night. Okay, somehow it's way ahead here. Alright. Alternate minimum is not applicable. ILS 15 right, 33 left, not available. 4 right, procedure not applicable, except for altimeter tolerant aircraft. 320 is. And 4 left. Okay. Don't see anything too substantial on the NOTAM file there. Alright. You have control.
I have control.
Are you ready for the approach briefing?
Go ahead.
Alright, once again, FS2 has popped up some information for me to populate here. So wet runway, weather's good. We'll say weather's good for now. APF to landing, yes. Threats, weather might be a threat. Auto land, no. Final sector, no. Decision height, what did I say, 219. Minimum descent altitude. Oh, no, I'm going to leave that. I'm going to do this. 219, minimum descent altitude 219. And arrival airport altitude is 19 feet, I guess, right? Somewhere here it should list it. Uh, 19 feet, yes, exactly. Perfect. Okay, so that's all set up so it's tuned and it knows what it's going to do. Alright, so today we are doing the Roebuck 3 arrivals to runway 4 right. This is published on plate 10-2 Delta for the Boston Logan International Airport. Notes, ruse transition assigned by ATC only. Well, whatever. SimBrief assigned it to me, and there's no ATC to object at this juncture, so be it. Turbojets only, radar required DDR, GPS, and RNAV. 1, 4 right, Judy, track 055, Sophie, then track 035 Sophie, then 035 to Ernie, then 035 to Goshi, then track 035. Expect radar vectors final approach course. Because there's no ATC online, I've just closed it right up. That's kind of the expectation, and they'll give us a vector if we need to. So the routing constraints are all in the box. Everything is as published, and we're transitioning onto an ILS to runway 4 right. This is just planned to be a Cat 1 ILS right now, plate 11-1, ILS 4 right, Boston Logan International Airport. IBOS 110.3 and 035. We're going to need to see that auto-tune. It should start to auto-tune. There it is, IBOS 110.3, 034. Is a little rounding error in MSFS. It's fine. MILT 1700, the ILSDA of 218. And again, I should have that up on the Barrow Mins here. Go back to the approach page, hasn't popped up yet. 218 is there. Missed approaches as published was otherwise advised by TC in the top altitude 3,000 feet. The Boston highest MSA is 2,500 southwest of the field over the downtown Boston area. Let's see here. Demeter required. INAV 1 GPS required for procedure entry. VGSI, let's glide past that coincident. Control tower reports tall vessels in the approach area. We've got different higher minimums to use when there's tall vessels in the approach area. And Sound approaches authorized. Sound approaches operators require use of vertical guidance. Maintain the last assigned altitude to 1,000 glide slope. Alright. No special notes in the plan. Happy's on the left for this runway. RVR 1800 half mile is the lowest RVR we can go down to for this. And once we land on runway 4 right, we're going to take a convenient left turn off the runway. We might make intersection Yankee or 33 right. If not, then let's definitely make intersection Romeo. We'll try for 33 right. Not going to hammer the brakes too hard. If it is wet, we might roll past that and get to 33 right, or get to Romeo. And then it'll be crossing runway 4 left, November, crossing runway 15 right to get to the terminal. We're usually parked at Terminal B or Terminal C for JetBlue. I'm going to check for gate momentarily. Yeah. Touchdown point limit, we'll use the end of the 10th touchdown zone. Optimal touchdown zone is from the marks to the second marks after. The aim point to the second points after. Alright, let's just pull up. Just trying to pull up the flight that is scheduled to go do this flight later. Departure gate I stole. Let's choose the same arrival gate in Boston. Let's see here. So, yeah, this one. It's going to pull up to gate Charlie 12 in Boston. So let's just have a quick look and make sure where Charlie 12 is. Just click on that. Pull up the parking gates. Let's just see where Charlie 12 is. Charlie 12, I think, is on the inside, yeah, of this pier. So November, just a slight left around the corner to get into Charlie 12. I think I parked that one before, actually. And the jet bridge didn't work properly there before. Let's see if we can get it to work this time. I think I've tweaked everything. I think it was GSX's custom gate jet bridges that did not like that gate. So we'll see how this works here. When we pull in, we'll have a look and see if the jet bridges look any different. Can't do anything about it now anyways, now that the sim is running. So yeah, because it's an ILS, once we clear for the approach, we will arm approach mode the second to autopilot. We will most likely not need the anti-ice for this approach. We are planning to auto brake low with config full. I'm going to use max reverse initially just because it is a wet runway, and once we've definitely got some positive deceleration, I will ease off the reverse and potentially switch from low to manual braking as appropriate to make an appropriate exit. There's no ATC online, so it's a bit of a threat right now. So we'll just have to keep our eyes peeled and communicate on the Unicom frequency. Boston is usually a busy airport at any time of day on VATSIM, so it actually does not look too busy right at this moment, but there are a bunch of inbounds. So we will probably be tied with a couple of people trying to get to this airport here. So we'll just have to keep a good eye on it, make sure we know what we're doing, make sure that we're conforming to traffic patterns, everyone's doing the same thing. And that's about it. That's all I can think of right now. The weather is a bit of a threat in Boston, but it is well above Cat 1 minimums right now. We'll keep an eye on the ATIS, especially, we'll get one more ATIS around the time we start down here. So we'll check on the ATIS again, make sure that the weather's still good. If necessary, we do have the Cat 2 minimum set up in the secondary, so we're able to very quickly switch to, the Cat 3 minimum set up in the secondary, so we can switch to a Cat 3 auto land at any point in time. We can do a Cat 3 dual auto land on this aircraft. Everything seems to be functioning. Nothing's failed yet today. And, yeah. Should have done another fuel check, but we're halfway through this briefing, so I just want to finish it up. Anything else I can think of? That's really it for the threats. Weather is looking good in JFK as an alternate fuel. We got lots of fuel to hang out for an hour anyways before we have to worry about going to JFK. I might just pull up the weather really quickly at JFK and just check the TAF as well as the yeah, let's pull up this airport here and let's just check the TAF as well as the METAR. So the METAR is looking good, scattered 2100. The TAF for JFK. The worst I see here is broken at 1500. That should be over and done with by now. And then it's just scattered 6,000. So I don't see this being an issue. Tomorrow it's going to be a rainy day in JFK. But for today, it looks like JFK is good to go. All right. It's a pretty thorough briefing, I think. Any questions?
No questions.
I have control.
You have control.
All right. I just find that the A320 SOPs here are a little bit weak in just there's not much to it. The checklist is very minimal. There's not a lot of stuff in the checklist. And a lot of it relies on flows. There's nothing wrong with relying on flows, but I believe in double checking your flows and checklists. And I just find that the basic Airbus checklist, it is very substantially short. Really, I think too short. I think there's some other risk factors that should be considered in there. All right, anyway, let's do a fuel check. All right, so we burned 49, 7. Let's see, that takes 11.9. Yeah, pretty much just under 12. Fuel is still very balanced, and temperatures are still looking good. All right, fuel's not an issue, and a quick RVSM check because it's been 90 minutes. And everything looks like it's still hunky-dory 35-10 or so. All right, Philly is just off there. This is just kind of the coast of Delaware. I believe that's the Delaware River up there, so I'm pretty sure that's Philly right up there. We are getting there. There's our 30 minutes to landing mark, pretty much as we pass and beat JFK there. All right. What else do I have to talk about? Anything? Oh yes, Navigraph. Yeah, Navigraph has got some nice new features here, and they're actually even included now in the app here, which is, or in the yeah, here in the even in the sim. So it's got some new options here of things we can do. We can turn our route on and off. Do it. Turn our route string up at the top on and off here. We can take away our pin board as well to give us a little bit more room to kind of look at what we're looking at here. I like having the pin board, but what's also really neat that they've added recently now is telemetry. So we now have telemetry here. Basically, this is just what's happening in the sim, and the nice thing is this is universal to all the Navigraph apps. So obviously we're in the sim right now. This is, you know, coming straight out of the sim. It's fine. It's kind of understood. But it's also available if you pick up the web browser version, if you pick up the app on your smartphone or your tablet or wherever you pick it up. The telemetry data is there, which is just sort of, it's really great for, you know, when you're doing those long flights and you're stepping on the flight deck for a period of time and you just want to see, hey, what's going on in the flight deck. And some of this stuff is pretty basic and rudimentary, and I can see the speed we're doing and the altitude and everything that we're at, and that's fine. But what really is useful is the stuff kind of at the other end here. So you step out of the flight deck for, you know, 15-20 minutes to go get something to eat or whatever, or maybe even longer because you've got to do some errands around the house, there's no ATC online, whatever. You can see your ETA, your destination. You can see how long the destination ETE, so we're only 27 minutes out from our destination right now based on our current rate of speed. And what I really like, and this is kind of a neat one as well, it really helps, is descent to destination. So from our current altitude to our destination, we would need to descend at 1,300 feet per minute based on our current speed to maintain, to get down to our destination. So you can kind of see where you have to start down. So these ones are really kind of useful for, again, knowing how soon I have to sit down at the flight deck and make sure everything is everything's back in order. So that's kind of new, and I do kind of like that. In the sim, it doesn't really do much good. And there's a bunch of custom metrics. You can add all sorts of different metrics, G meter, rate of turn, altitude AGL, you can do the current position, climb gradient, all sorts of stuff, current transponder setting. Like, really kind of neat, kind of well thought out. But like these last couple ones especially, like for just stepping out of the sim, but you can, you know, like I said, you can have your device with your phone, your tablet, you know, you're doing the dishes or making dinner or whatever, and you can just look down and say, oh shoot, you know, I'm closer to my destination than I thought. You're sort of trying to time it in your mind, but you can also just kind of keep an eye on it in real time, and if something goes wonky, the one case in point I have is the Citation 700, the Citation Longitude. I fly that one sometimes around, and it doesn't have a strict auto thrust system, but it's got some auto thrust protection. So if you go into overspeed, it'll cut the thrust to like 30%. If you go into underspeed, it'll put the thrust up to like 100%. So you have to set the thrust yourself. If you exceed any limit, it'll adjust the thrust to the opposite end of the spectrum to get you back out from under that limit. But it's not designed to really kind of protect you. long term. It's just a short-term protection until you kind of come to and realize what's happening, you know, while you're distracted or something. So what I'll often find is I'll set one of those long flights, and I'll set what I think is an appropriate power setting to kind of keep me just a little bit below the red line. But it's just a little bit too high, and it just slowly creeps up over the red line, and then I'll come back down half an hour later, having, you know, done some chores or eaten something or whatever, and I'll find that the airplane is now sitting just barely above the stall speed because it went the auto thrust protection pulled back to idle. So just having the indicated airspeed there, so you can monitor the indicated airspeed and say, yep, that is a good airspeed, or you can say, oh no, yeah, that decreased to like 150 knots. That's not right. Something's wrong there. It's just a smart idea. Again, another really nice Navigraph innovation. Doesn't cost you anything extra. It's all part of the Navigraph package you're already paying for. I like it. I like it a lot. I'm not going to use it in the sim. There's no point to me using it in the sim. I've got I've got this nice thing up here, the overlay up here. But yeah, just for walking around with a tablet or pulling out the browser somewhere else on another screen in another room, you can get an update on the status of your sim from there. So that's good. All right, we just passed a waypoint, so I'm just going to really quickly update my. Just passed Hetty at 1643 with 6.88. So let's pull this up here. Hetty. 1643. Aha! Now we're ahead. 1643 with 6.8. And we're supposed to have about 6.3, so we're making even more gas. We are making gas here, not burning gas nearly as fast as SimBrief says we're going to, and we're now even a minute ahead. So we've made a minute back and then some. So yeah, looking good. I don't see any problems with us getting on to Boston. I elect we continue, and so we shall. And Miss Way gave a shout out to 14 viewers 7 days ago. Ha! I just noticed that in my message feed. I don't even know who this person is. I guess they are following me. And I don't know why they gave me a stream. Playing FIFA 23 the last couple of broadcasts. I mean, don't get me wrong. I am, I'm always happy to get a shout out, but it's funny when someone you don't know or don't expect. Yeah. Plays FIFA 23. Well, she likes what I'm putting out there. I'm all more for it. Just yeah, it's just funny when like somebody you don't even know who it is. Like there's a bunch of you guys that tend to chat a lot, and I love chatting with you guys, and I recognize all your names. It's weird when someone who I don't recognize gives me a shout out. All right, there is New York there. Passing by New York, a beautiful shot of New York. Actually, let's see if we can just do an external shot here. That's the New York skyline. I'm just going to get rid of myself here. If I can right one there, that's the button. And I'm just going to try and just sort of catch myself with New York in the background there. Nice jet blue fin there. We're gonna head back there in a couple of seasons. There's JFK right there. That's Idlewild right there. There's JFK right there. That's the Indy built JFK. Kind of loaded from a distance. I don't know if we can really see that much of what's going on there from this distance. It probably hasn't loaded much now. It's loaded very well. It's fine. From this distance, I wouldn't expect it to load high quality. High quality. There you go. So there's a nice little screenshot. Just take a couple of screenshots here. Something that something for my title card eventually. Something like that, anyways. Alright, that's enough of that for now. Put myself back on. Hello. And, yeah. We're now 30 minutes to landing. If only we have a descent checklist on this. We don't even have a descent checklist. We just have an approach checklist from here on out. And then the landing memo is the only thing. Not even a landing check. And that's one thing that I kind of find. I get it, but I find it like a little bit weird about the Airbus. Like, there's no landing checklist. It's just, landing memo. No, it's all green. It's good. Nothing down there. Okay. I believe you. And nothing failed on this flight again. It's a little disappointing. I was kind of hoping something would fail. And I do have to say, like, I like the way Fenix has structured their failures because you can just do random failures. Nope, not at zoo. Config, random failures, and you can literally just insert a random one at any point in time. There's not enough of you guys watching right now that make me want to do it, though. You guys gotta get your friends involved. If I see 10 people watching the stream simultaneously, I will trigger a random failure. But otherwise, I will still have random failures on. We will get some random failures here and there. They don't happen too often. Every handful of flights, they might get one. So I'm okay with triggering some random ones because there's some stuff that's pretty benign, but it's good to show the Airbus procedure and how to deal with it, how to deal with VCAM. And for today, I'm kind of okay with this because it's the first flight on stream of a A320, of the Fenix A320. I don't want to be doing a huge long I don't want to be dealing with anything really too untoward. If something pops up now, I'll deal with it. I'll gladly deal with it. I'm not going to trigger anything, I think, today anyways, but maybe starting the next stream, if we get enough people watching, we'll trigger failures. And I'm hoping that we're going to be able to do this pretty regularly, about once a week, I expect, on weekday mornings. Unfortunately, it's weekday mornings is where I'm at because that's when I'm not working. That's when I'm not working. That's when I don't really have any other obligations. So those will be the days that I do it. But otherwise, I'm hoping that we can kind of keep a pretty regular schedule. About once a week, we'll get a flight stream in here, and yeah. I think I finished my coffee a little while ago. Oh no, I didn't. I still have coffee left. Good. After 3 hours, it's kind of cold. But anyways. And the point is that it's also soothing the throat, which is I'm becoming aware that my throat is reaching the end of its talking point. I'm getting to the end here. There's not a whole lot more talking I can do. So I can see our top of descent point coming up there. We're about to cross CCC. I think it's Calverton, and then Ruse is shortly after that. Yeah. What else? Anything else interesting really in the flight sim world? There's not a whole lot kind of right now. People are kind of pins and needles. There's all sorts of airports coming out all the time now. Lots of great releases. So, you know, wherever you want to fly in the world, whatever airport you want, like, yeah, not all of them are out there by any means, but most of them are. It's pretty consistent that almost every major airport is out there somewhere. There's a few that I could think of that I'm disappointed and surprised are not done yet. Phoenix is one. Surprised that there's no good Phoenix yet. Montreal finally got released a little while ago. MK Studios finally released Montreal, so Montreal's finally gotten some love. But yeah, North America-wise, I can't really think of too many major airports that haven't gotten at least some love. LaGuardia is probably one that almost strikes me as a bit disappointing. It's gotten some love from Field Air, but Field Air does not do a very good job. Their models are very rudimentary. And I think what it comes down to is I think what Field Air starts with airports for their tower simulation program, and then so they create the 3D models to create kind of a reasonable rendition of the airport for their tower, and then they import that into the simulators, into MSFS, because I find the buildings just have a little bit of a cartoonish is not the right word, but they're a bit basic. They're a bit on the basic side, especially things like night lighting. Like the night lighting of LaGuardia does not look good. It just looks like a bunch of kind of glowing textures. It doesn't look like it has any depth. The building does not look like it has any depth, like there's anything inside it. It's just like there's a bunch of yellow windows. It's the night lighting. It's like really. Daytime is kind of okay. It's a reasonable facsimile, but nighttime especially really kind of goes downhill. So I think we could definitely use a much nicer version of LaGuardia, because LaGuardia is one of the most beautiful airports in North America now. It went from being one of the ugliest, one of the worst dirty holes of an airport in North America to being one of the most beautiful pieces of architecture in North American airports anywhere. I will challenge you. I'll put it up against any airport in North America. It's not perfect. But it is definitely, and maybe it's just because of the contrast with what came before, but it is a breathtaking airport now, both inside and out. It's a very nice looking airport, and it's a shame that there's not a good model of it. The model that exists is kind of like, it's okay, it's better than the default blocky buildings, but it's not great. We really could use a nice model of LaGuardia, because that's a beautiful airport, fun approach. You do the park visual to runway 31. you know, over Manhattan, and just there's so much beautiful scenery around there. Short runway for a nice challenge. Like, it's a fantastic airport from a simming perspective. It's challenging, short runway, challenging visual approaches, even challenging IFR approaches because of the number of obstructions and structures nearby. So there's an airport that could really use some good quality love. I can't think of too many other airports off the top of my head that I really want to go to that don't have at least a decent model. Just trying to think now. I mean, most of the major airports, Phoenix is the other one that comes to mind. It's sort of like a pretty big hub for a lot of airlines that has not been well covered. But certainly out of major North American hubs, yeah, LaGuardia is like one of the last. Just trying to think if there's anywhere else, any of the other major airline hubs I can really think of that are neglected at this point in time, and nothing else comes to mind. Phoenix and really a good LaGuardia. Kind of thinking through all the coasts, I can't think of too much else. You know, it's been 3 years now since MSFS has come out, so it's been a long time. But the community has worked diligently. The developers have worked diligently, and there is just an absolute multitude of aircraft, airports, you name it. You make the sim how you want it now. The base sim is there, it's yours, you name it, you make it how you want it. I like the airline flying, I've got airliners, I've got major hub airports, airline destinations, but you want to do VFR flying, there's tons of great VFR airplanes out there. Some of them are extremely high quality, even the default ones are not bad in MSFS, but you know, you get like the AccuSim, what do they do, the Cessna 404, the Comanche, the single Comanche, you know, 172, like all these great airports, aircraft. All right, I'm going to set 6,000 for the bottom altitude on this star here. All right, 6,000 feet is set, and here we go. Descent all blue, down to Boston. Still no ATC, huh? Nothing. What are you going to do? I was optimistic, cautiously optimistic. You got to keep your expectations realistic too, I think, sometimes. Okay, there's a guy off our left side that's climbing out of JFK, so we might have to keep an eye out on him as we're coming in here. Otherwise, I don't see anybody else. I think we're going to be the next arrival into Boston. There's one guy on the ground that landed from LIRF. That's Rome. And there's this guy coming in from the west. Guy coming in from the east, but I think we're going to be next into Boston, so there's not a whole lot of traffic even on VATSIM right now. It's early in the day still, so. Oh, and there it is. I see him on the TCAS now, so there's the guy climbing out of JFK. He's eastbound. I believe he's transatlantic there by the looks of it. So, yeah, he's off to Manchester. So yeah, we'll cross his altitude a little bit. He was about the only traffic I'm really worried about. Otherwise, you know, any departures, maybe they'll spawn on in Boston, but otherwise, not too much else going on here. We've got the descent nav, alt blue. No descent checklist in this aircraft. Just carry on. The next checklist is the approach checklist, I guess. Transition, I guess, and then to the descent checklist. And I do love this bracketing in this airplane too. Like, this is one of the really nice features is the soft holds. The descent speed range. So if you're at managed speed and it's in a descent, you've got this range of speeds that you're allowed to be at. And it's not, I just love it because it's not just constantly adjusting the thrust. That's the only problem with auto thrust is like on previous aircraft, it's been like zoom, 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 just trying to target this ideal speed, and every little wind variation causes change in thrust. And it could be uncomfortable for the passengers. You know, I'm sure it's putting a little bit of extra, more than a little bit of extra wear on the engines, constantly adjusting the thrust. But in the Airbus, it just kind of goes to idle or goes to a power setting, and just as long as that power setting keeps it within this range, and this range would be as wide as 40 knots, plus or minus 20 at its widest. That's a huge range, and as long as the airplane's still within that range, great. It won't adjust the power setting. If it reaches the edge of the range, okay, it'll make an adjustment to the power setting as necessary. But again, smart innovations that just make the whole operation a little bit more efficient, keeps it well within a reasonable range. Then as you cross the restrictions, it gets a little bit tighter, but it you know, it allows for the variations in the real world to come out without causing undue stress on the airplane to try and fly this idealized flight path. I kind of like this, like, it's not necessarily laissez-faire, but it's just, you know, we don't need to be perfect bang on every number all the time if the real world is not exactly as our plan forecast. You know, we have a wind forecast, speed error at SOPI, so it's not going to be able to slow down at SOPI for some reason. I'm going to check on that in a second here. But yeah, if the world is not as ideal as forecast, you know, the winds are not exactly as the wind we've inputted here, you know, or something happened in our descent to kind of put us a little bit off the descent, it's not a struggle to try and maintain that perfect idealized path. We have a little bit of a range of paths. We can fluctuate on it without having to constantly adjust power settings, descent rates, and all that stuff. And I like that Airbus philosophy at the end of the day. Precision is nice, but in the real world, precision just doesn't always work. You should be driving on the center of the lane of every lane of the highway, but you know, at the end of the day, nobody's perfect. You know, the steering's off a little bit on your car. Maybe there's a little pothole you want to just sneak around a little bit. You know, like there's allowance for some small variations without without reducing the overall safety margin of the flight. All right, so we passed Ruse. We're definitely on that inbound there. What do we have? TCAS on? Is it on all or is it on below? Yeah, I think this guy said it's below for us. Nice, thank you, guy. All right, we are on our way down. Just 15 minutes will be on the ground in Boston. I'm just going to reset this, but I'm not going to be doing any more fuel checks. And then comes the landing. And I'm still have some mixed emotions about landing version 2 of the Fenix here. I think it's better than it was. But it still feels like it has way too much inertia coming down. You try to flare and it just doesn't flare. It just keeps on going down, and that is not. I find that's not realistic. I find that you flare this airplane a little bit, and it will float nicely down the runway. But I find in the sim, I feel like I have to just absolutely yank back on the controls to get any kind of a flare. It's just way too much. Maybe it's my perception. Maybe I'm out to lunch, but it just feels like it's way too much. All right, let's see here. It's 16:59, which means there's probably been a update here. Alright, so I'm not quite adjusting this yet just because I'm just going to go hit refresh and see if there is a new Boston Information Alpha 2999er. Alright, so 2999er. 2999er.
2999 set, passing 16,700. Now.
Perfect, thank you, sir. Alright, Boston Information Alpha at 16:54. The winds are 140 at 310 miles, few at 800, scattered 27, broken 43, broken 25,000, 23 degrees, 21 degrees, 2999er, ILS 4 right, departing 9, 33 rights, broken turnoffs, still all the rest of the race is the same. So no substantial changes. We're going to carry on with the plan as previously briefed, easily a Cat 1 at this point. Speed should be coming back to 260 knots for rope, 260 knots for Roebuck, and any second now it should trigger this deceleration here. It does have us marked down for 260 at Roebuck, and there it is. Okay, there it is. We did pass the deceleration waypoint. 260 knots is in there. It's idling. We need to be below 19, above 12, below 19 and 12. So it looks like we are well within the descent window. We've definitely got a level off here, which is going to allow us to decelerate for 260 knots here. How's our TAT looking? TAT is plus 19 up here, so we don't need the anti-ice for this. TAT is plus 19. It's the same as the Boeing's 10 and below. You got to have the anti-ice, the engine anti-ice on, and some moisture, but we're way above that. Now, we are slowing down. We're going to lose some of this TAT here because we're slowing down, but I don't think we're going to lose another 70 degrees just to get to 260 knots. I think we're going to be okay. All right, we got 3 miles. We're substantially losing speed here. We're coming just for 280 now with 2 miles to go. Yeah, I think we're just going to be in the plus or minus 10 window just in time here. Well planned. Well planned, BNAV. I was kind of ready with the speed brakes, but we did not need them. We are well within reason here. Just got to slow down another couple of knots here, but there it is. The 260 knot at Roebuck is met. We're well within the altitude window. Next is Provy above 11,000. Speed. Next speed constraint would be Sophie at 220. And right now green dot, we're looking at 214. So we should be able to get to SOPI 220. I'm not sure why it's giving me a speed error there, 220 at SOPI. We might need some speed brakes to just help it out a little bit. There's speed again. Alright, so the TAT is plus 16 now, so we definitely should not need the anti-ice on the way down here. The SAT's already at the positive temperatures as well. Looking good, looking good. I like it, I like it. And I hope that background noise is not too noisy. I turned it up a little bit because I thought it was a little bit quiet, mostly because especially the background voices calling me were a little bit quiet, but I hope it's better now. It's not too quiet though that it's you know, overriding everything. So there's the 11,000. Next is Judy, and then it's Sophie. 220 knots between 9 and 10,000. This will work out nicely. The 320 does not have nearly as much problem slowing down as the 321. The 321 will be sitting here riding the speed brakes the whole way down. Alright, there's that guy that's going off to Europe there, and here we go into the clouds. Flight plan page, back on the perf page. So it looks like, see the deceleration waypoints just before Goshi. So it looks like it's going to cycle automatically to approach phase at Goshi. Thrust idle. Normally the FO would get the lights, but I'm going to get the lights just because it's about triggering my pilot's life in your rear here. Approach checklist.
Baro ref.
2999 set.
2999 set. Seatbelts.
On.
Minimum.
Barrow 218. 218 feet set.
Auto brake.
Low. Low armed.
Engine mode selector.
Normal.
Approach checklist completed.
Thank you. Alright, it's not terrible. It's a little clunky, different from what I'm used to, but it's not terrible. Alright. Yeah, we missed 220 knots in Sophie there, but not by much. We were within the 10 knot window. Between 9 and 10,000. Next is Ernie between 7 and 8. We got 5.7 miles to get to that. Speed. It's very much within reason. Goshi at 210 knots. Yeah. No, we could do a little bit below green dot for that. That's fine. 3 knots below green dot. Alright, we're sort of coming into the deck here. Sort of. Boston, 30 miles away. Viewer, Boston's up. One last look to see if there's any ATC. I got Cleveland Center. I got Newark Tower. I got nobody for Boston. And we are definitely kind of first on the list here. There's a couple of different arrivals now in the next half an hour, 45 minutes, but we are definitely first here. And we're below 10,000 feet. I can trigger GSX now to give me an arrival gate while it's going down here. So Charlie 12 is the plan. JetBlue, GSX choice. Thank you. Alright. So there's below 8. We're in the Ernie window. But everything works out well. This airplane is a joy to fly. Because it just does everything for you. Assuming the programming was correct. But you do have to watch it, because sometimes it will not be able to make a restriction, and it'll tell you. It'll just say error. And it won't tell you how to solve it. It'll be up to you to figure out how to solve the error. Alright, so next is Goshi at 6,000. Alright, so I'm going to pull speed. Manual speed, 210 knots, thrust idle. Still pretty much on path here, within a very reasonable margin of being on path here. All right. Let's go to level just for a second. We pass Goshi. We're going to drop down to 4,000, intercept the glide slope. Alt star. Alright, there's 4,000 feet. Thrust idle, open ascent, all blue. We are on Unicom, right? Yeah. Boston traffic. JetBlue 1282 is established on a 19-mile final for the ILS runway 4 right. Flaps 1.
Speed checked. Flaps 1.
Alright, we're going to arm. We're going to say we're clear for the approach. Arm approach, second autopilot. So we allow Loc, glide slope blue, Cat 3 dual, autopilot 1 and 2. There's Loc. Beautiful. Temperature still good, 20 degrees, no change status, clear status, clear status. Alright, speed's managed. And see, she will slow down a little bit. The 320 will slow down. The 321, we'd be stuck here on trying to maintain a 3-degree glide slope. There's glide slope star, speed. We're just getting it below the flap 2 speed there. And it looks like she will kind of stay at the S speed more or less, so we'll be okay. If you can, you don't want to deploy flaps 2 till about 2,000 feet AGL. There's glide slope, and the missed approach altitude of 3,000 feet is set. If you can avoid it, but sometimes if you're already established in the glide slope, you need the flaps 2 just for the drag. It seems like we're kind of doing okay. We don't really need the flaps 2 that badly. We're just sort of maintaining S speed with just a tiny bit of thrust. I think it's going to work out okay. Got to keep an eye on it, make sure it's going to be good, but I think it's going to be good. Oh, look at that. We kind of broke out of the cloud there a little bit. I didn't even notice that. See some of the stuff outside. Good stuff, good stuff. Anywho, focus on the flying. Focus on the flying. There's a broadcast message from the VATSIM supervisor to avoid extraneous chats on the Unicom frequency. Please keep all conversations on the Unicom frequency professional and pertinent to traffic advisories only. Alright, so it's looking good. We're maintaining speed just fine, so we'll get flaps 2 in another 500 feet or so here. Just get through a little bit more. I don't think we're having any trouble spotting the field here either. It seems like it's doing just fine.
$2,500.
There it goes. Flaps 2.
Speed checked. Flaps 2.
Now here comes the drag as the flaps 2 deploys. So first it doesn't really do anything with the slots alone, but then when the flaps come out, she starts to drag back a little bit. And she looked pretty good out there. Gear down.
Gear down. Cabin crew, be seated for landing.
There, not too bad. I was worried it's going to be IMC. It's a little low ceilings and spots, but it's not terrible. Not terrible at all. Flaps 3.
Speed checked. Flaps 3.
Flaps full.
Speed checked. Flaps full.
Landing checklist.
ECAM memo.
No blue. Landing no blue.
Landing checklist completed.
Alright, there we go. We are on final. Boston traffic. JetBlue 1282, 3 miles final, runway 4 right. It's beautiful scenery here in Boston too. And then this approach also, especially to 4 right, is a nice, very scenic approach. You go right past downtown Boston. You go right over the AT&T walkers here on the port, port in Boston.
1,000.
Those guys right there, just to the left of the ship. They look like, honestly, they look like the AT-AT walkers from the Star Wars movies. They're about the right size too. They're absolutely huge bloody cranes. All right, that's enough for me. Autopilot off. Cat 1.
Checked.
$500.
Land.
Checked. 100 above.
Roger.
100 above.
Minimums.
Minimum.
Continue.
Checked.
100. 50, 40, 30, 20. Retard.
Spoilers. Reverse green.
Spoilers.
Decel.
Reverse green. Decel.
I always find it doesn't flare well. I don't know what it is about this airplane, but I like it doesn't flare well. Manual braking.
70 knots.
Yeah, at the real world I nail it every single time, but almost every single time. But yeah, in the sim, for some reason, this plane is it's clunky to land. I don't know what it is about it. It doesn't respond well in pitch during the landing process, and I don't know why. I don't know. They've tuned it a little bit better. It's better than I think that it used to be, but I don't know. Something about it. It doesn't land well. Boston traffic, JetBlue 1282 is clear runway 4 right, taxiing along 33 right, crossing 4 left and 33 left to get to the apron. Alright, disarm spoilers. And I think this triggers his after landing flow. And where's my... Alright, and I'm back to being clunky again, sorry guys. Alright, after landing flow pattern here, so that's all I do. Spoilers and exterior lights, that's me, okay. Strobe should still be on because we're on runways.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of the captain and the entire crew, we'd like to welcome you to our destination. For your safety,
clear left.
Please remain seated with your seatbelt
Clear
fastened,
right side.
leaving all items of hand luggage
I
safely
see somebody
stowed
taxiing
until the
there.
seatbelt
Is it
signs
a
have
departure or is that an
been
arrival? Is this guy just like somebody that just
Before
spawned
you
in?
leave the aircraft, please ensure
No, he's a
you have
departure.
all your
JFK to
personal
Boston.
items and hand luggage with
No,
you.
he's an arrival. JFK to Boston. He
Please
just
be
landed
careful
on
opening overhead lockers as items may
I'm
fall
right.
out
Didn't make a
causing
single
injury.
call on Unicom.
We'd like to remind you that smoking is not permitted until you reach the designated smoking area. If you require assistance when you leave the aircraft, please contact a member of our ground staff. If you're connected
After
to
landing
another flight
checklist.
today and hold a boarding card and transfer wallet advising you of your departure terminal, please follow the signs.
After landing checklist.
Radar and predictive wind shear system.
And please check your gate number in the departure lounge.
Off.
Avoid missing your onward flight.
After landing checklist
Recommend that you
completed.
go straight to your departure terminal.
Alright. Yeah, there's the guy who landed on 15 left and didn't dock to anybody. Didn't say a word to anybody. And like, why fly on VATSIM if you're not going to talk to people? That's the thing that always bugs me about this network. It's like there's so many people who log onto the network, fly around forever, ATC shows up and disappear. Oh, stop listening to me rant. It's like, why? Why bother to log on the network if you're not going to talk to people? The number one reason for this network to exist is for ATC communication and even airplane-to-airplane communication. Let's talk about it, buddy. But this guy just landed on 15 left and talked to me. Okay, I could do... Yeah, I'm still going to leave that off. I don't want that on. Landing lights off. I'm going to leave the strobes on for one more runway crossing. Clear left and clear right. And I was going to take Alpha to the ramp, but I'm not sure where this guy's going here, so I may just... clear this runway. We'll kill that strobe now. Just going to give him a couple seconds to get by. Well, we saw one other airplane. Actually, we did see a couple other airplanes. We nearly hit another airplane with that TCAS RA. Without that TCAS RA, we would have hit that other airplane. So it was good that we got that. But that was a great demonstration. I was just like, I couldn't have planned that any better if I wanted to. It was a great demonstration of how well the TCAS system works on the flight directors, and then within the Fenix itself, it's just like it's such a modern iteration. It's nice to see that Fenix has modeled this very new software update accurately. Alright, so he's got the APU spooled up, that's good. And then, what's my last flow? Is it parking? Yeah, parking flow. Accumulator pressure check. Alright, yeah. Accumulator pressure you should be checking before you get to the gate, not when you're at the gate. You should be checking it like, just before you turn onto the gate. So that if it's not there, you know ahead of time. So we're going to the corner there, Charlie 12, the last one on the right. Alright. So as we come in here, there's a little flow we do just before we get to the gate, a bunch of checks just to make sure you haven't missed anything important. There's basically 5 of them here. So as we come around the corner here, I do believe I see the marshaller. Alright, I see the marshaller. So we go taxi light off, APU bleed on, APU is available, anti-ice is off, check the accumulator pressures in the green, and double check that the weather radar's off before you fry your ground crew, and they have no ability to have children after you've been around. Alright, last time I came to this gate, I remember now, the bridge did not want to work when I arrived here, so let's see if this will hopefully work for us this time. Alright, lights are off. Over. If you look in the window there's people moving around in the terminal. It's just a simple little function, but it just adds a level of depth, an element of realism. You believe it's a real building with people in it. It's not just a block with some stuff painted on the side of it. Alright, brakes on, APU's available. Shut down one engine, usually wait for the power transfer. Clunk. There it is. Do the second engine. Doesn't even flash the screens. Come on, how realistic is this? Please remember to submit your flight. Thank you. Let's just make sure I do everything here I'm supposed to. Engine masters, exterior lights. So let's just make sure that these are cycling down. Yep, they're cycling down. So seatbelts off. Beacon off. And let's see here. Slides, check disarmed. Coming up as disarmed here momentarily. Yep. And the jet bridge works on this one. Love it. And seatbelts off. Alright. Parking checklist.
Parking brake or chocks.
Set.
Engines.
Off.
Wing lights.
Off.
Fuel pumps.
Off.
Parking checklist completed.
Beauty. We are done. And I love that look at the up there on the signboard. It says, contact ground 21-9. Oh, wicked. I love it. All right, that was not too bad. I gotta say, actually, I'm pretty reasonably impressed. Request deboarding, and also on your tablet it will ask you, hey, do you want to deboard? And you'll say yes. I'm gonna mute you, buddy. And the other thing I have to do here, because it took the jet bridge away again, and the nice thing is Fenix allows you to pretty easily alternate this ground services, and just toggle jetway, and it'll put it back on there again for you, so that everyone will walk off on the jetway. But that's it. We are here. We made it to Boston in the 320, and my frame rate did not collapse. Woo! Which was probably my biggest concern of all. It was not so much how the airplane handled, although I know that I'm not particularly impressed with just the clunkiness of these SOPs, because they're not my normal SOPs. They're Airbus SOPs. They're not how I actually operate. But enough of all my GSX ground guys here. Where'd everybody go? Deboarding requested. So where is it? There's vehicles parked here and they're gone now. That's funny. Oh well, anyways. We made it. That's the important thing. So thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed that. Let's go ahead and hit submit on this first flight of season 11. Let's see here. Flight. No, not the dispatch. Submit flight. There we go. Are you sure you want to submit the flight? Yes. I think that was a pretty successful flight overall. There were a few minor issues here and there. And that happens in any flight. There's always issues. You do your best with them, you recover from them. Next is Boston to San Juan. It's going to be a big, long ETOPS type flight. I'm not sure if this is ETOPS or if it'll be benign ETOPS. I think this will fit the ETOPS though, to go all the way down here. I'm pretty sure we're not in the benign ETOPS area. So yeah, we may have to do a full ETOPS flight. And I don't think I've done an ETOPS flight. I can't. Well, I have, because I've done these transit line flights, but I can't think of the last time I did an ETOPS flight. So we're going to have to look at some ETOPS requirements for our next flight. That'll be an interesting discussion, because there's not going to be much to look at on the way from Boston down to San Juan. Really not much to look at. So I'm pretty sure there's going to be an ETOPS flight. So we'll have a look at that. We'll make sure the flight plan is fully ETOPS ready and prepared. But in the meantime, that is it for me for today. That was a great flight. The weather actually in Boston turned out to be pretty nice. The scenery is beautiful. The frame rate is holding 30 frames. Holding it pretty well. I'm very impressed. I was concerned. I was honestly very concerned about streaming this airplane, just because of the performance difficulties I've had with this airplane in the past, and it's really maintained it quite well. I think the other thing that I have to say that is probably working to my advantage, it's not night, and I find that night does tend to, with the lighting, tends to add quite a bit of performance hit to the aircraft sometimes, and I tend to do a lot of flying in the evenings as well, just for fun. So I tend to see that performance hit a lot. I think the other thing is that there's no traffic here today. There's no other airplane models being drawn, and it's not much, but it does have an impact. Like if I was to do this right now, just as a curiosity, as an exercise, I'm maintaining a pretty solid 30 frames per second right now. If I pull up FSLTL traffic and just import like 25 or 30 airplanes, how much will this tank my frame rate? So let's go into, not this one here, let's just fire up the injector. And let's just watch my frame rate here. So it's a good solid 30 right now. Do I want to adjust any settings? No, fine. All right, so 15 max parked aircraft. Here come the airplanes. 27, 25, 30 still. 30 isn't thinking about it, but now it's definitely not maintaining. It's kind of still doing a 30. But now it's sinking a little bit, 28, 27. I'm just watching it here. It's actually on my overlay software. So here it is, 26, 27, 25. It was pretty solidly 30 before. See a 24 in there, so it's hindering the frame rate. It's not impossible. It's actually not bad. It's not done yet. 34 IFR isn't counting. There we go. Frame rate 27, 26. So it took about a 3 or 4 frame hit. Took about a 10% frame rate hit here. Seems like it's done now. It's actually not bad, and it looks really nice kind of seeing this airport with a lot of airplanes in it, various JetBlue liveries. I like it.
JetBlue
190s as well as the Airbuses. I like it actually. It actually does not look too bad at all.
Just under 908, we're on the downwind for running
there, Spirit.
Right. We'll extend her down.
It's not bad. It's not bad. It could be a lot worse. I will say that. It could definitely be a lot worse. I'm just going to try and do this. I'm just trying to, again, find some nice screenshots here that I can use for my title card maybe for this new JetBlue season here. It's JetBlue time. Something like this. Hey, it's JetBlue time. Or like this. I do this. That's actually nice with the control tower in the background. I can just get it kind of level there. That's pretty good there. Pull it back just another couple of notches there so that when I put my things on it. But anyways, that actually is not too much of a frame rate hit. I'm actually pleasantly surprised. But when the airplane's also operating, it tends to, you know, now it's stopped and nothing's really processing the flights. The performance modes are not calculating anything. It's a little easier on the frame rate. So I do like that title card though. That's nice. I think I might keep something like that. Boston Tower in the background. But anyways, guys, that was tons of fun. I hope you guys enjoyed watching that. Stay tuned to the Discord as always. I'm going to have try to have another stream next week. That's my goal, is one stream a week. And yeah. And Gaten UK, you're back. We're already here, as you can see. But thank you anyways for dropping in. And yeah, you could pick up the whole full stream on YouTube in a couple days whenever I get a chance to just drop it on there. Otherwise, hopefully next week we'll come back for another stream for the next leg, Boston down to San Juan. It's going to be a pretty long slog. I think it's the longest slog of this season. So we'll get that out of the way early here in episode 2, and then we'll move on from there. But yeah, that's it for me for today, guys. I hope you had fun. Put myself back on there just so I can wave goodbye. I'm gonna see if I can fix my webcam issue because it is a little bit blurry. It's way blurrier than it should be, and I'm not sure why. So I'm gonna see if I can fix that. But anyways, in the meantime, guys, enjoy the rest of your week. See you out there on the VATSIM skies, and take care, everybody. Have a great day.